gave out misinformation constantly on accident, I remember thinking that one of my favorite Imagineers, that being Tony Baxter, I thought his name was something completely different for multiple years on it, because one of these blogs just came up with a whole different name for him, to the point where I actually embarrassed myself in front of another person who also liked Disney blogs. I was in a conversation talking about who my favorite Imagineer was, and I just straight up cited a person who didn't exist, and they had to be like, do you mean Tony Baxter? That's not his name isn't that, Shannon. And you have never been embarrassed until someone with the same niche interest as you corrects you about something you thought you knew a lot about and were confidently speaking about. But these blogs that existed on Tumblr didn't really need to be accurate or right any of the time, because they weren't meant to be legitimate resources for people. They were more or less made for people like me who couldn't afford to go to Disney parks as much as they wanted to, and it was just a little bit of internet escapism put into your online browsing. And it's through those blogs that the world was introduced to a man named Andrew Decode, better known as Smiling Peter. You see, when Walt Disney made Disneyland, it wasn't just a park where you can go on rides and experience elaborate theming that would never be touched by any other corporation. When you went through the park gates, you were supposed to be transported into a land where these fairy-tale creatures and characters that existed on screen came to life. This was supposed to be where they really lived. And how do you make the young and the young at heart believe that Cinderella, Snow White, Tiana, Sleeping Beauty, and all their favorite fairy-tale characters are in fact real? How do you do that? Well, you put them physically in front of them, of course. When a kid walks into Disneyland and they see Sleeping Beauty's castle and then later see her walking through the park, they are meant to feel as if she lives there, as if this is just a day in her life and she's on a daily stroll to get some Dole Whip or hang out with her other princess friend. When you are casually walking by the Haunted Mansion and you stumble upon Jack and Sally during Halloween, you are to feel like you are in their neighborhood, and so on and so forth. Disneyland employs young men and women to walk around the park fully in character to give the kids the experience of seeing their favorite characters in real life, to make the magic happen for those kids. So you could be walking through the park and just happen to stumble upon Winnie the Pooh, Pluto, Minnie Mouse, the Mad Hatter, Alice, and more. And you have never seen pure joy until you witness a kid for the first time seeing their favorite character walk by them. They used to do this a lot more, but due to crowding in the parks, a lot of the meet and greet experiences are attractions in their own right. Like the princesses have to stay in one area and you like line up to meet them, which is a change I personally hate, but I do understand. Going back on topic, Andrew Decode was one of these face characters, and he played everyone's favorite boy who never grew up, Peter Pan. I don't know what it is, but for some reason Peter Pan is literally every emo girl's heartthrob. We all grew up having crushes on him, and it's something about a boy who would never grow up, who spends the whole runtime of the movie being a dink to his main interest, to the point where he was cool with letting the mermaid straight up drown her. Something about that kid really tugged at the heartstrings for more.
Dude, don't tell me what jumper. You shut up, Zemo.
Girls growing up while watching it, including me. I know I said I don't understand why girls liked him, but I lied. I grew up with such a fat crush on Peter Pan. It's damn near stupid. And to this day, I cannot tell you why. I look back and I'm like, this kid kind of sucks. As an adult, I say that. But growing up, I was like, this is my dream man. I am going to never grow up and live in Neverland with Peter. It's just gonna happen. Because of that, because literally every teen girl liked Peter Pan at some point, his face character was top billing for a lot of the teen girls who go to the park. Add to that, the Jeremy Sumter Peter Pan that was popular when I was growing up had a famous line where Wendy asks if she can give Peter a thimble and then gives him a kiss. And very quickly, every girl who went to the park was asking Peter Pan the same thing, with multiple reports on Tumblr saying that you asked him, he would. Did he actually kiss random girls on the mouth who asked him to? Probably not, because I'm pretty sure Disney would have some kind of rule against that. But that didn't stop multiple girls from making Tumblr posts that should have been placed on r/that happened saying as much. Peter Pan as a character on his own was a huge draw for the parks, specifically in the teen girl demographic. Girls who grew up having massive crushes on him would stumble upon him as he's running around the parks and immediately turn into marshmallows at the thought of talking to him. But as Tumblr blogs dedicated to documenting Disney parks started gaining more and more popularity, with people documenting their experiences more and more in videos and photos, it became really apparent that Andrew's portrayal of Peter Pan was something to behold, and much more popular than any other face character that was currently working in the parks. Just to give you an idea about how many people love Smiling Peter, I went through the archives of the Fuck Yeah Disney Tumblr blog, which caused my computer to freeze 5 times. You're welcome. And just to show you how statistically more popular he was to literally everything else that was posted, this gift set of Smiling Peter has 14,000 notes on it. 14,000. The one directly after it has 327 notes, and the one posted before it has 37. But you know what? That's not fair. That's not accurate. That doesn't mean anything, right? Those are just pictures of the park. Of course, they're not going to have as many notes. So I went to the next face character post that I could find, that being of Flynn Rider and Rapunzel. So this has 2 face characters, so it's gotta be more, right? Nope, they have 55 notes. So this Peter Pan, this one alone that Andrew was playing, was causing a ruckus, and it was apparent. But why was that? Well, as someone who was a part of the ruckus, who loved his Peter Pan so much that I followed multiple blogs dedicated to it, there was something so authentic to how Andrew was playing Peter. Because we all know collectively, as teenagers, as adults, we're on Tumblr.com who love Disney lore and history. Andrew isn't a kid. He's not really the boy who never grew up. He's not Peter Pan. He's an adult actor who's getting paid to run around the parks and interact with children. But there was something so earnest and real about how he was playing Peter that people just wound up believing it. Something about the way he would run around, interact with children, climb on things, and never act as if you had his full attention, even when you were the only one there. It just fit the character that so many people grew up loving. He found a way to perfectly encapsulate this character to the point where people took notice in a big way. Gift sets were going viral. Things were constantly coming out. People go to the park just to see him. They even gave him a nickname, Smiling Peter, because he was constantly climbing on things while running throughout the parks, an action that wasn't done as well with the other Peter Pans. Now, like I said before, there were plenty of Disney Parks blogs and offshoots of those blogs that get even more niche as you go down, which meant that when people started to notice how much people adored some of these face character posts, the whole blogs would shoot up dedicated simply to the face characters of the parks. Like Fuck Yeah face characters and more. But even then, even with that niche interest, having its own blog, that wasn't enough, because this Peter Pan was so wildly popular that he ended up being the inspiration for multiple blogs dedicated to him and only to him, which is wild. The fanfare didn't stop there though, obviously, because videos of him playing musical chairs with Alice and the Mad Hatter were getting so many views on Tumblr alone, because pictures of him were getting hundreds of thousands of likes and reblogs, that started converting over into real life interest. People started going to Disneyland specifically hoping to see him, just so they could get their very own photo and videos of him to go viral, and just to get a chance if they could ask him for a thimble. Posts started appearing talking about their experiences with Smiling Peter, a lot of which were incredibly fanficky, and most definitely didn't happen. Like, I keenly remember a blog post where they talk about how he broke character to whisper in someone's ears that she was beautiful, or another post where they said he gave them his number and whatnot and they met up that night. All of that totally completely didn't happen. But despite the fact that we can look back and know that, it just added fuel to the fire, and more teenage girls started going to Disney with the express purpose of going to see this Peter and to get their own Tumblr moment. And frankly, when they did, they were a bit aggressive. Now for Disney, this was kind of great. You want people to go to your parks, and the fact that people were really into one of your face characters because he embodies a character so well, that's a plus, right? Well, kind of, sort of, not really. Like I said, people were getting really aggressive with Andrew, but it wasn't just Andrew. You see, Andrew wasn't the only person playing Peter Pan. He wasn't working at the parks 24/7, running around and being adorable. There were other actors portraying Peter at the same time, and frankly, the World Wide Web wasn't as nice to them as they should have been. These actors, who were supposed to be portraying a character meant for kids, meant to interact with just the kids, were getting shit on simply for not being the right face actor that people wanted to see that day. People would go to the parks just to see smiling Peter and get annoyed when it was his day off, or he simply wasn't there. And they had no problem talking about how annoyed they were. They had no problem being rude to the other Peters, one of whom ended up quitting because of it. Not to mention on the days where it was Andrew, the intense fanfare would end up causing crowds, people crowding around him and not giving him a chance to breathe or interact with kids, which doesn't necessarily work when the whole point of having him walk around is for him to take kids on little adventures and be more or less interactive with kids, not teens. But that didn't work when teenagers and adults are pushing the kids out of the way to get to him to make videos. It also didn't help that his real world fame was starting to get in the way of him being able to portray Peter Pan, because people quickly figured out his name and would sometimes call him by that name to get his attention, which was just a dick move all over. Like, you know he's supposed to be portraying Peter Pan, don't yell his real name in order to mess him up. Like, that's not fun. Tumblr's fascination with him quickly led to him being one of the most sought after people in the parks, with adults and kids chasing him around, hounding him, and trying to get a special moment with him. And it became such a huge problem because the more and more teen girls who were obsessed with him, the less and less he could interact with his target audience. Again, literal children. As Peter's online popularity grew, Disneyland realized that they had to fix this problem. They needed to do something. They could keep Andrew, who was undeniably one of the best actors they had ever hired, and was literally causing pandemonium because he played Peter Pan so well, even though it meant crowding at the parks, and even though it meant hurting other Peter face characters. Or they could let him go. And so, after 5 years of him working as Peter Pan and 1 year of huge internet fame, they ended up firing him. Andrew ended up writing this letter to his fans about the decision. When I had the amazing opportunity to become a Lost Boy over 5 years ago, I never could have anticipated how it would change my life. Over the course of time with Peter Pan, he taught me so many amazing things and allowed me to experience a life primarily reserved for dreams. Every day together was a new adventure. Fighting pirates, saving princesses, playing pranks, telling stories, and chasing our own shadows became daily activities. And that was usually all before lunch. No day was complete without recruiting new Lost Boys, paying of death that we would never become pirates. Peter showed me that in each of us is a need to play, and he taught me the importance of make-believe. I will never be able to thank Peter enough for letting me go to Neverland, for letting me swim with mermaids, dance with Indians, dodge cannon fire, and sleep on clouds. These are all experiences I will forever cherish. I should hope that Peter will remember me too, but he does have a tendency to forget. Leaving Neverland for the last time was not my choice. Sadly, it is the fate of all children to grow up, all except one. Still, I wish I didn't have to. Personally, I want to thank everyone who made my journey the greatest of a lifetime, so thank you. To grow up will be an awfully big adventure, one that I'm becoming ever more excited about. Andrew Dakota. P.S. Peter, about Wendy, I think I'll keep her. Oh god, that's a whole other part of the lore that I didn't mention, but Andrew was also dating in real life the face character of Wendy Darling, and they are now married, and they have at least one child that I know of. And straight up, I will admit, I cried over it, and people on Tumblr have cried over it, and there were gift sets about it. It's a whole thing. Tumblr loved this man so much that they accidentally got him fired, and there's something just so Tumblr about that. But what's even more interesting is now when they're introducing Marvel into the parks, the Loki face character is kind of going the way of Smiling Peter. Like, TikTok is obsessed with this motherfucker to the point where it's starting to happen again, and I'm just really interested in all of it. But with all of that being said, let me know what you guys think about this piece of Disneyland park history in the comments down below. Were you also there at the time? Do you remember?
Let's face it, we've all run into those annoying content factory meme accounts that just churn out garbage every 10 minutes. Accounts like LMAO, Puberty, and Memes seem to be stuck in 2013 pumping out low-quality, relatable memes that are just blatantly stolen from other accounts. Well, back in actual 2013, these meme factory gimmick accounts were absolutely everywhere, and it's almost bizarre to look back and see what a huge influence they had on internet culture at the time. One of the most popular among these was an account called Common White Girl, who not only reigned supreme on Twitter, but was supposedly part of a secret underground network of teenagers who influenced global meme trends and made bank while doing it. So grab your Starbucks, pull your hair up into a messy bun, because we're headed back to the 2010s to talk about the rise and fall of Common White Girl. Before we get into the video, I just want to give a massive thank you to today's sponsor, Wingfox. Wingfox is an online learning platform where you can take courses in digital painting, animation, special effects, filmmaking, graphic design, and more. Thank you so much to Wingfox for sponsoring this video, and now let's get on with the story of the rise and fall of Common White Girl.
Something big is gonna happen that could shift the balance of the Cold War.
I hope you brought an army.
So back in the 2010s, soulless content factory meme accounts were absolutely everywhere. Yeah, I know they're definitely still a thing nowadays, but like they were just a way bigger part of the culture back then. You may remember accounts like Dory, Meme Provider, and GoPost who would post daily and even hourly memes and relatable teen posts. We'll get back to these accounts later because it's a massive rabbit hole and a lot of stuff ended up going down, but for now let's focus on one of the most popular content factory accounts, Common White Girl, who went under the handle @GirlPosts. But what exactly is a common white girl? Well, basic is a slang term that describes women who prefer to consume mainstream products, trends, or music. In the early to mid 2010s, the idea of the basic bitch rose to prominence and was a huge part of internet and fashion culture. Back then, basic meant flannel shirts, infinity scarves, Ugg boots, Starbucks, messy buns, Nutella, and disturbingly extensive knowledge of the cup song. I'm sure many of you remember this fad and maybe even been a part of it. I can't deny my roots as a 9-year-old. I used to think this was like the peak of fashion. Now keep in mind that some people use basic to describe women as unintelligent or less than, and that's not what I'm going for at all. I'm just here to discuss the trend and do some affectionate goofing. I don't want to frame anyone as stupid or bad just because of the way they dress, so don't take it as me saying that. Okay, let's continue. So the basic / common white girl trend was all over social media, from Tumblr to Twitter to Instagram to Pinterest to, I don't know, LinkedIn. Relatable slogan tees, quotes about Wi-Fi and Nutella, Ugg boots, yoga pants, infinity tattoos that have quote a lot of meaning even though they were just stolen off Pinterest. And of course an unholy addiction to Starbucks, or at least to posting photos of Starbucks. Do you guys remember that awful unicorn frappuccino that everyone was posting back then? Keep in mind that at the time this was a completely unironic style, like you were cool and fashionable if you dressed like this. Nowadays the whole basic thing is more of a meme than anything, but back then women were calling themselves basic bitches with pride. There was even a challenge tag going around at the time called the Common White Girl tag, where YouTubers would answer questions like how long does it take you to get ready in the morning? What's your favorite Starbucks drink? How many selfies do you take every day, etc. So in 2014, with the trend already rising to prominence online, one teenager decided to cash in on the craze by making the Twitter account Common White Girl. Well, I say one teenager, but the whole mystery of who actually owns the account is a bit of a rabbit hole which we'll get into later. This account was one of, if not the biggest parody meme account at the time, gaining over 10 million followers and becoming a household name. The account supposedly started off as parody or satire. From the website Know Your Meme, the page reads, Common White Girl is a novelty Twitter account that pokes fun at various stereotypes and cliches associated with middle-class white American single women. In a similar vein to previous satires of white American lifestyles such as stuff white people like, white girl problems, and concerned mom 420. On July 25th, 2014, the Twitter account Common White Girl was launched as a satirical journey written from the perspective of a middle-class American young woman in her teens or early 20s. And while the account's early posts are long gone for reasons that we'll get into later, this description is a far cry from what Common White Girl would end up becoming. While this post frames the account as a satire page with the purpose of making fun of basic white girls, it quickly became very unironic and began catering to the very audience that it was meant to be mocking. Common White Girl would post account as a satire page with the purpose of making fun of basic white girls, it quickly became very unironic and began catering to very audience that it was meant to be mocking. Common White Girl would post extremely basic memes, you know, that kind of relatable humor that's just bottom of the barrel, just trying to appeal to as many people as possible. I hate how a majority believe that when a girl's silent, she's falling apart, crying inside, overthinking, but maybe she's just hungry. When you see a girl all over your man who's not really your man, and you shouldn't be mad because he ain't your man, but that's your man. When Bae flirts with you and you flirt back and he just leaves you on red, and the picture is gone now, so guess you'll just have to imagine what hilarious reaction image they put here. And this is where things get a little messy, because there wasn't just one Common White Girl account. Oh no, there were hundreds, if not thousands of these things, all with similar layouts, profiles, and content. This became a whole genre of Twitter account with anyone being able to make a Common White Girl / Girl Post clone and get famous off it. These knockoff accounts include, but aren't limited to, Common White Girl, Common White Girl, Common White GRL, The Whitest Girl, You Jealous Much, Princess Post, So White Girl, Typical Girl, Very White Girl, Wow Life Quotes, So Relatable, Flirtation Ship, It's Common Girl, and Girls Relatable, but believe me, there are plenty more. Just go on Twitter and type Common White Girl and you can find hundreds of accounts using these hipster Rapunzel profile pictures and labeling themselves as relatable meme pages for girls, though most of them are dead nowadays. A similar phenomenon happened with another Content Factory meme account called Dory. Originally, the account was written from the perspective of Dory, a character from the Pixar movie Finding Nemo, as a kind of satirical in-character parody. But much like Girl Post and the rest of the Common White Girl accounts, Dory's Twitter soon shifted into pumping out the same generic, relatable content, which has absolutely nothing to do with Dory or Finding Nemo or parody in any way. Dory was actually one of the first accounts of this kind to get big, gaining over 2 million followers and directly inspired other Content Factory accounts. In a way, accounts like Dory and Common White Girl kind of shifted away from being these parodies or characters and into being more like brands and trying to market themselves to teenagers as relatable and fun and getting millions of followers in the process. Obviously, all these memes were intended to get as many likes and retweets as possible and appeal to the widest possible audience, so the post was super generic, bottom of the barrel, relatable post that even bordered on being kind of creepy or weird at times. But they were a product of their time, they just kind of reflective of the humor back then, and it's not like they were hurting anyone or breaking Twitter's terms of service, right? Well,
Introducing Finaco Bank, the new platform for serious online trading. With 20 years experience,
okay, so maybe these accounts weren't quite as legit as everyone thought. It turns out that many big name meme accounts, including Dory, Girl Post, Six Facts of Life, Nutella, Cheerleader, Baby Animal Pics, Common White Girl, Meme Provider, So Damn True, Diary for Teens, Simp and Mild, and Finna, were stealing memes and original content on a huge scale, but it gets worse. The accounts were using an application called TweetDeck to carry out some extremely shady practices behind the scenes. If you've used Twitter before, you might already know what TweetDeck is. The application is owned by Twitter themselves, and it's basically just a dashboard that lets you schedule tweets and manage multiple Twitter accounts at once. Essentially, it gives account owners more control over their Twitter, which is good for businesses and the conglomerates of joke-stealing teens, I guess. So why was this a bad thing? I mean, people use TweetDeck all the time to curate their accounts, and it's not like it's illegal or anything. Well, the owners of these meme accounts were using TweetDeck to not only manage and post from multiple huge accounts, but to buy and sell retweets. Go Post, for example, with their 10 million followers, would offer to retweet posts, thus making them viral for a sum of money, and would also make deals with other TweetDecks to boost each other's content. According to some of the teens running these accounts, they could earn thousands of dollars a month or even more depending on how big their account was and how much they were willing to sell out. According to one source, all of these massive accounts were in cahoots, often run by the same few people, and they would work together to control viral meme trends. The source gave an example stating that TweetDeck accounts had single-handedly made the Alex from Target meme go viral. For those unaware, this meme started when a teenager took a photo of a Target employee and posted it to Twitter, where it went viral due to people thirsting over him to the point where he got onto the Ellen Show. If this source is to be believed, then clearly these large parody accounts held an insane amount of power, supposedly being able to single-handedly influence internet culture however they pleased. A select few accounts also supposedly took credit for the rise in viral popularity of the Flappy Bird app and wrote that they could make games jump to the top of the App Store charts with a few simple tweets. Allegedly, among the people who paid TweetDeckers to retweet or boost their posts were actual big-name brands, so it seemed that large companies were using these accounts as a way to covertly advertise to teenagers. One anonymous TweetDeck owner wrote in an article, quote, "A way these accounts keep momentum going is by a retweet sharing deal organized amongst other large parody pages. A large Twitter account like Tweet Like a Girl will make a free retweet deal with another large Twitter account like Dory or Fat Amy. Each account retweets 3 of the other account's tweets. Usually one of those 3 retweets is a paid ad. Pretty shady stuff, and it's clear that this network of TweetDeckers was far more powerful and went far deeper than anyone thought. Some even called them the Twitter Illuminati because, you know, this was the mid-2010s, so that Illuminati confirmed meme was still funny. However, despite their influence, the use of TweetDeck to buy, sell, and trade accounts, likes, and followers was explicitly against Twitter's rules and guidelines. We'll discuss the incredibly shady practices of Common White Girl and other TweetDeck accounts just in a minute, but first I want to touch on something really weird about Common White Girl accounts that I feel like I need to mention. So by now you've probably noticed the uncomfortably large number of Rapunzel edits that have been popping up. Well, bizarrely, as the trend of the Common White Girl aesthetic began to grow in popularity, Rapunzel became almost like a poster girl. As we've discussed, the trend rose to prominence on the internet around the early 2010s and was originally associated with Cinderella, with many of the accounts having Cinderella-related profile pictures and graphics. Also, I noticed a lot of them used to have this icon of Sleeping Beauty, but it's more like relatable because her makeup is all smudged and she looks tired. That's so #me. Basically, the whole trend was already heavily linked to Disney, with the obsessive consumption of Disney media being an integral part of the Common White Girl aesthetic. So when Tangled came out in early 2011, shortly after the Common White Girl aesthetic rose to popularity, Tumblr and Twitter flipped their shit. For some unknown reason, Rapunzel seemed to speak to all of these teenagers on such a deep and profound level that they started making hundreds of strange and increasingly intricate edits. These pictures usually changed Rapunzel's appearance to make her more goth, hipster, or basic by editing her clothes, makeup, and hair. Weirdly, it was mainly this specific image of Rapunzel kind of popping out from the side of the screen that was used for most of the edits, but other promotional images were also used. There were also the really weird ones where Rapunzel's head would be edited onto a real body, and yeah, they were always super uncanny and weird. Ugh. There are an insane amount of these things online, so I'll just breeze through them and give you a quick flyover of some of the most popular ones. Rapunzel wearing a "But First Let Me Take a Selfie" shirt. Rapunzel that looks like Hazel from the Fault in Our Stars. Hipster Tumblr fangirl Rapunzel. System of a Down punk Rapunzel. My Chemical Romance Rapunzel. Rapunzel wearing a Nirvana shirt. Pinterest girl Rapunzel. And the pinnacle of all Rapunzel edits, Imagine Dragons Rapunzel. Take it in, folks, I think we're done here. That's literally just scraping the surface. There are hundreds of these edits on Tumblr, Twitter, and Pinterest with a Rapunzel edit for every single style and fashion sense. The reason why this occurred on such a huge scale is kind of a mystery. It's really hard to pinpoint the first edit or where the trend exactly stemmed from. I can only assume that the idea of editing characters like Rapunzel, Ariel, and Tinkerbell to be punk hipsters was a weird form of rebellion and self-expression for a lot of kids and teens at the time. If you're too young for tattoos and dyed hair, well, reblogging shit tons of edgy Rapunzel edits to your Tumblr is the next best thing, I guess. If any of you guys remember being flooded with these edits as a kid or when you're online, let me know down below, because personally it was like a big part of my early online experience. The whole phenomenon being so heavily linked to the Common White Girl accounts and just being so popular in general is just so weird and random to me. Okay, anyway, back to our story and the fall of Common White Girl. Despite the fact that Dory, Common White Girl, and other TweetDeck accounts were so insanely popular, they were also very widely hated. Many people pointed out the lazy, generic content of their tweets, and these accounts were also constantly called out for stealing jokes, memes, images, and posts from smaller creators. Many of these accounts had been mass reported and even temporarily suspended in the past, but they somehow managed to come back every time. It got so bad that these accounts were basically 99% stolen content, and what's worse is that they were making bank off of it. With many TweetDeck accounts gaining millions of followers and generating thousands of dollars in revenue, Twitter decided to step in. On March 10th, all of the biggest TweetDeck accounts were permanently suspended as part of Twitter's spam crackdown initiative. One of the most common spam violations we see is the use of multiple accounts in the Twitter developer platform to attempt to artificially amplify or inflate the prominence of certain tweets. To be clear, Twitter prohibits any attempt to use automation for the purposes of posting or disseminating spam, and such behavior may result in enforcement action. Essentially, the reason Twitter gave for the mass deletion was a combination of content theft and spam violations. This came as a shock to both the account owners and Twitter in general, as most users had become used to the constant presence of these accounts on their timeline. Posts by big tweet deckers were recycled hundreds of times and spread through every social media possible on a daily basis, and now they were gone. And while the general Twitter community celebrated, the owners of these accounts obviously weren't too happy. But that begs the question, who was behind Common White Girl or any of the big TweetDeck accounts? Well, that's where things get bizarre and really shady. Supposedly, according to an inside source, 90% of relatable teen parody accounts were run by grown men. That's right, all of these relatable typical white girl meme post accounts were run by grown men laughing as teenage girls for money online. This is especially odd given the fact that these accounts generally tweeted from a first-person perspective, so when typical girl posted about bae or bad hair days or periods, that was written by a dude. One of these guys was influencer Ray Lopez, who ran the Dory account among others and became somewhat infamous after releasing his video, Twitter suspended my accounts. This video was widely dunked on due to the public's general hatred for TweetDeck accounts, and creators like Danny Gonzalez even made videos on him. These parody accounts weren't just run by random teenagers though. Oftentimes they would be secretly run by large brands and influencer marketing companies. Most parody accounts started with one or two teenagers goofing around and trying to get some clout, but once they got big, they would be quickly snatched up by large multi-network influencer marketing companies who would hire them on and take a cut of their earnings. One of these affiliate networks, the Blue Market, was endorsed by Kevin Jonas and would give away iPads and other luxuries to its top salespeople who were often minors, giving off major MLM vibes there, not gonna lie. Interestingly, according to this inside source, the original Common White Girl/Girl post was one of the very few popular parody accounts actually run by a woman, but she was eventually snatched up by a huge influencer network called Viral. According to its CEO, Viral supposedly made over 2 billion Twitter impressions every month and claimed that the network, quote, consisted of close to every supermassive account on Twitter, the elites. The identity of Common White Girl's original owner is known, I believe. I obviously won't be sharing it here to respect her privacy, but some interesting information did end up coming out. She ran a bunch of other big parody meme accounts, including So Damn True, LMAO, Females, Country Voices, and Google Facts, which I can only assume are all conglomerated into Viral Network's huge collection of parody accounts when she joined the network. Considering the claims that just one big account could net thousands of dollars a month, who knows how much Girl Post was making with her TweetDeck empire? Despite many account owners and viral influencer networks speaking out against the bans, Twitter didn't budge, and the suspensions have remained to this day. While most Twitter users celebrated, a surprising amount came out in support of Common White Girl, posting about how they didn't want her to go and would miss her posts. It's clear that these relatable girl parody accounts were a huge part of internet culture at the time, popularizing meme and humor trends as well as fashion and lifestyle trends. It's scary to think that a bunch of networks and brands were manipulating and pulling the strings behind the scenes to influence popular trends and secretly advertise to the young and impressionable audience. Oh wait, I forgot the fact that that's the norm now because we live in dystopia. My bad. Either way, it's pretty shady that these predatory influencer networks recruited literal minors to do the dirty work for them by abusing TweetDeck and manipulating Twitter behind the scenes, all while stealing from hundreds of smaller creators. After the mass banning on Twitter, Common White Girl and other large accounts simply vanished, and who knows what the owners are doing nowadays. Let's just hope whatever they're doing it with a little more integrity and originality and with a little less joke theft. These content factory accounts can still be found on the internet today in the form of joke stealing meme accounts who do sponsorships or large conglomerates of soulless pages clearly run by some larger network. Either way, Common White Girl and the associated trends are well and truly dead now, and that's probably for the best. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I really hope you enjoyed that video. I'm sorry if the camera is a little bit funky. I just got a new one, which is really cool, and hopefully it's a bit better quality, but it keeps focusing on the Tommy Wiseau poster behind me, so sorry if there's been any graphical or audio error kind of things. I'm still trying to sort.
Learning. According to the World Happiness Report of 2021, the happiest country in the world was Finland. Happiness is something we are familiar with, yet something we need help to find. This prompted the rise of the self-help genre, teaching people how to achieve it.
We all need a life that's more meaningful, a life that's more fulfilling.
Cinema portrays what it's like, and music attempts to poetically define it. In the Western world, it's almost turned into a goal we have to achieve, so much so a new branch of psychology
Got some money, got some cash, I'm rich, now I'm sad, and I wonder if I'm sad about the money that I have. Got some boats on my plane, at the hotel where I'm staying, just in case I ever have to swiftly get away. And the window is broken, and the cold winds are blowing in at me. That's when I knew that the fairy tale was true, and tomorrow I'm going out to sea. Got some money in my hand, and it makes me mad because I don't know what money means. Everyone knows that the world is cold, and you can warm it up with a little truth.
I regret the things I did. You're wondering what it is.
I said it 3 or 4 songs ago. It's time for the show. Got some money in my hat, and it makes me seem tall. I can see where all the money in the world has gone. It's swimming across the floor of the ocean, peacefully floating there. It's $4.95. Some call it $3.99. Some call it $1 billion. Money is bad. I don't understand what to do with it, or how to deal with it. Yeah, I tell my friends what it does, how it works, what it's worth, and if it can change the world. Yeah.
LinkedIn Sales Navigator helps me build and maintain relationships virtually.
Best way to do expense reports is not doing expense reports. Pleo is a business.
I'm a princess, and I think about the diamonds in the sky too often. Do you love me, or have things gone astray? Buckets catch the dreams as
on his way to go and rescue everyone, and getting Bucky and Sharon Carter involved as well. Sharon having that full Mission Impossible tech with the taking off the face thing, which I found weird that they didn't ultimately use within the episode, that she has this sort of face-changing technology that she just takes off. It's just sort of like an Mission Impossible reference. I thought it was cool. It seemed like there was a Chekhov's face thing, but I guess not, which fine. It's okay. You don't need to use it. It's okay. It's there. It's there if you want it. And right up front, during this whole opening section, I do want to say that the cinematography and lighting during the section, the reds and blues, were absolutely wonderful. I mean, not only the reds and blues sort of evoking Captain America type feel, the sort of American colors as well, but also the color of police sirens, which obviously evokes a lot of things for the black community, especially this week, I'm sure. So I just thought there was a lot of, like, I don't know, symbolism within the use of red and blue within the colors and sort of what they represent at different times. I just thought the cinematography reflecting that was really, really awesome in the opening of this episode. But then we get Falcon flying in through the window and revealing his new Wakanda-made Captain American costume, and oh my gosh, that costume looked truly, truly amazing. Honestly, the only disappointment I have with this costume is that I didn't get to see it on a big screen. I mean, honestly, I can't wait for the next movie that Sam Wilson's gonna be in, because I am so looking forward to being in the theater and just seeing what he looks like in that costume in, you know, a huge screen, because it looked so wonderful. Like, I loved my Steve Rogers costumes, and Steve Rogers is one of my favorite superheroes of all time, but I gotta say it, Sam Wilson's costume, fan-freaking-tastic. I absolutely adored it, just wonderful. And the wings, it was just, I could gush about it all day. This would be a super long video if I kept doing that, but fantastic costume. Then we have Sharon and Bucky going after different members of the sort of Flag Smashers, while Falcon fights the French guy, Dvorak? What was his name? Dovich. I can never remember his name. He's very forgettable for me. The only thing I remember about him is he has a French accent, which seems like a bad thing to remember about a person. The only thing to remember about a person. Also, Captain America Sam makes some French jokes about Dovich at one point, like French fries and a baguette. Not only are those jokes okay at this point, but they also feel like circa 2001 time frame. So a little bit of an old joke there, Sam. So get updated. did on this. But ultimately, I thought that fight between Falcon and Dovich was very cool. I like seeing the sort of showing of his powers, that he was like using the booster on his back to shove him and sort of like using his sort of Falcon technology to sort of offset the fact that he does not have the super soldier serum. I truly thought the usages of his costume throughout this episode, like when one point when he was punched by Carly, he sort of blocked it with the shield and the wings went into the ground to sort of brace him. That was very cool. Like just such smart usages of the costumes to sort of offset the fact that he's fighting people who are technically more powerful than him. So great job of making that feel believable. The one thing that I'll say about this early part of the episode with sort of Bucky and Sharon and Falcon all doing different things, and then the helicopter was taking off with people that the Flag Smashers had kidnapped, I was a bit confused by some of the goals here. Normally in action sequence, we always want to know where a character is going to, what their aim is, and during this opening sequence, it was a little bit muddy. I wasn't entirely sure who was supposed to be going where and after who and for what reasons, what the goals were. So it was all a little bit muddy towards the beginning, but it got better as the scenes went along. But that's my one knock against the episode, is that the first 5-10 minutes of this were a little bit unclear whose goals, what everyone's goals were. I also like Carly calling Bucky and them having sort of a conversation, and Bucky trying to talk her down, saying like, people that you kill, you will remember them, trying to connect with her that way. Obviously, that's not as powerful for her because she's Carly doesn't really care all that much about the people that she's killing. She's going to be more callous because she's sort of seeing the larger goal. And Bucky was a character who never really had a larger goal when he was the Winter Soldier. He didn't really have that sort of larger ideological stance. But I like that she calls it out in him, and Bucky says, I do know what it's like to fight for something larger than myself, and I failed twice. And it's kind of funny because ultimately I don't think he failed in a lot of his aspects. You know, fighting way back in World War II against the Nazis and also Red Skull, he did ultimately succeed through Steve. And so I feel like he did win some ideological battles, even though he didn't feel that way. So I sort of like that conversation between the two of them. I thought that was very nice. Also, we have Sharon knocking out or possibly killing one of those dudes very brutally with some sort of virus thing. It was very, very disgusting and very, very hinting at later on that she was going to be revealed to be the power broker, that she's willing to do very dark things. So I like that little hint and tease of what's going to be coming later on in the episode with how brutally she took out that guy. Then Carly and the group decide to steal some more hostages for everybody. And Carly's kind of off the deep end at this point, saying we'll kill people, we'll do whatever to stop this. It doesn't even matter if we die. Ready to be a martyr sort of thing with her, with who she was, and everyone feeling a little bit uncomfortable with that. I've talked about enough on this channel my feelings of Carly going a bit too far, but I feel like using that sort of juxtaposed, like her martyrdom and wanting to be a martyr, sort of juxtaposed with what Sam says later on the episode works much better here. So I like this, even though it was like very much like, yeah, she's off the deep end now. But I think that worked. But then, surprisingly, we have Walker showing up in his faux Captain America costume. And I love that his shield just immediately he throws it and just knocked away, and is somewhat useless throughout most of this because it's not made of vibranium. I thought that was kind of hilarious and very apropos. Clearly he's dealing with PTSD. The only knock I have against him showing up is actually just a line exchange that he has with Carly. Walker shows up and Carly says, I'm sorry I killed your friend. I didn't mean to kill people that don't matter. And of course Walker's gonna be like, you think Lamar didn't matter? I'm like, that didn't read like a real thing that Carly would say in that untactful a way in that moment. Like clearly her whole shit is that she cares about one world, one people. So I don't think she would say Lamar didn't matter. It just felt like a line that was being used to sort of like piss Walker off. Kind of a weak line in my opinion. Again, it's a small thing, but it threw me out of the scene. Like that line very felt like just trying to create a thing between Walker and her that felt a little bit forced when there was already enough there with her having killed Lamar. So a little bit of a weak line there to motivate Walker. But then Bucky shows up and plays the hero and saves the hostages while Walker fights these people off. But then the bus starts to fall over the edge and Bucky falls down as well. Cool little fight there where he's like using his arm trying to stop himself from falling over and protecting himself from above from Carly. I thought that was very, very cool to see. But then we got probably the most surprising moment of the episode for me, honestly, was Walker. He has a moment to choose to go after Carly or save the hostages, and he chooses to save the hostages. He uses his super power to try and pull them back up. Ultimately, he fails, and Falcon is the one to save them in a really cool moment where he's using his tech to sort of push up the car. I thought that was great. But I was just more surprised by the fact that Walker got a little bit of a redemption moment here. Now, clearly, as we see in the end of the episode, they're setting him up to be a U.S. agent and possibly work with Valentina, who might be Lady Hydra. As I looked up last episode, Julia Louis-Dreyfus is possibly playing Lady Valentina, possibly going to be showing up in the Black Widow movie as well. She would have appeared in that before this show would have come out if COVID hadn't happened. But yeah, it was just interesting to see him get redemption. I think a lot of us were sort of dead set on him being like, this complete jerk and asshole, and he has been that, and obviously he did terrible, brutal things at the end of episode 4. So I'm not entirely sure I feel completely comfortable with him getting redemption, but ultimately I like that the show walked that line because I'm not here saying like, I think they did a terrible thing by showing him have redemption. But I'm not entirely sure I feel comfortable with that. And a show like this, as all of its themes are, should make me uncomfortable with that. What does that make me feel that this guy who did such a brutal act can also be a hero in some ways? And I like that the show raised that question while not fully forgiving him because clearly he's kind of being set up at the end to possibly be a villain into the future. We don't know. He still had that more ambiguity to him that isn't gotten rid of by this moment, but he ultimately isn't just become a black and white villain that we expected him to after the after credit sequence of last episode. So I ultimately really kind of like that. I felt you could have maybe done a little bit more with his character in this episode, but clearly they're setting him up to appear later on, so there's obviously so much more they can do with his character. So I'm excited to see where they go with him. And so ultimately right now, while I still think there's more to be said with him, they're clearly going to say more. And here I was enjoying that I was uncomfortable with some of the choices here, and I like sitting with that uncomfortability here. Also, just briefly mention, I like the flight sequence where Falcon sort of shows off his ability to fly as Captain America and sort of like him using Red Wing to sort of figure out if the lady had flight training and sort of timing with her and using her earbuds. I wasn't sure why she had earbuds in her phone still after everything that was going on, but that's fine. I'll get past that. But it was just a cool moment to sort of see that as a Captain America that can fly, he can do some different things than Steve Rogers ever could, and some creative ways to use his specific abilities as Captain America. I thought that was a fun usage of him through this action sequence. But then Falcon shows up and saves the hostages, and then we get a fog machine from Dovich, and so they go into this underground tunnel for the final act as Sharon shows up as well. Obviously, everyone does the sort of like walk around in the dark looking for each other thing that we get in all the movies. Oh, this way, who's gonna find each other? What point? Who's gonna get the upper hand thing? And surprisingly, it ends up being Dovich, Sharon Carter, and Carly who find each other first, and Sharon is revealed to be the Shadow Broker. Bum bum bum! I'm so shocked and surprised. Not really. We all kind of expected that, right? I mean, we were all kind of expecting this at this point, that Sharon was a Shadow Broker, and that she might have ulterior motives and want Carly. Clearly, she can't get the super soldier serum anymore that she was after, and so now she wants Carly to come and work for her, sort of thing. But obviously, that's not gonna happen. Dovich shows up to complicate things. Sharon shoots Dovich, who threatens her to reveal her identity, and Carly shoots Sharon as well. Nice little reveal there. Again, obviously, as we see in the after credit sequence, Sharon is being set up for more things. So ultimately, I'm like, if it wasn't clear that she was going to be continuing on in other things, whether it be another season of the show or another movie in the MCU, I would be disappointed here because I'm like, oh, she didn't really do all that much throughout the series, and her reveal was kind of just like kind of felt perfunctory here. And I do feel like they could have done a little bit more to integrate the Power Broker a little bit more into the series as a threat, and sort of hinting at her throughout. She kind of felt a little bit ancillary the last few episodes, so I was a little bit disappointed there. But ultimately, I'm glad that this isn't sort of the end for her, that she is going to be playing into larger storylines down the line. So that is very intriguing to see. So a little bit of disappointment with how she was sort of revealed and her utilization within this series, but I am excited to see the sort of morally ambiguous Sharon going forward. It honestly just makes her character so much more interesting than when she was initially revealed in, I think, Civil War might have been Winter Soldier, where she was initially revealed, and she was just kind of like lazy, boring, and seemed like a replacement for Agent Carter that Steve was interested in. And always felt a little bit weird for that. So I'm glad that they're kind of making her distinct in her own right through this choice. Then we have Bucky and Walker capturing the rest of the Flag Smashers. Walker gets like a Abraham Lincoln line mercy. I forget the exact line, but it was fairly funny. And again, I was just surprised to see Walker getting redemption and showing mercy, not something that you'd expect from this character at this point in his arc. So great for being unexpected there. And I like Bucky sort of saying like, don't say Lincoln quotes, it sounds awkward in your mouth. Then we get the fight scene between Karli and Falcon. Kind of a lot of sort of reiterating what we already said, the difference between the two of them. Falcon trying to talk her down, Karli not wanting to, and ultimately dying, being shot by Sharon. And by the way, I just realized right now that I've been saying Falcon for a few times here. Captain America, he is Captain America now, so I will get that in my brain. Apologies to Sam for that. But I like that Sharon was the one to kill Karli. It sort of hints towards Captain America that she is a little bit more morally ambiguous without fully revealing her hand. So great reveal there. Then we get Falcon bringing out Karli's dead body. I got very Arkham City vibes from that, by the way. Did anyone else get like ending of Arkham City vibes with Captain America bringing out Karli's body and sort of laying it out on a stretcher? Very much felt like Batman bringing out the Joker at the end of Arkham City to my mind. Very similar imagery. But then we get probably my favorite scene, definitely my favorite scene in this series, and one of my favorite scenes in the MCU probably of all time. I have to again sit with it. I just watched this episode just now, but I was absolutely loving this. Where Falcon goes up to the senators who are voting to remove people and place different people in camps and gives them a full indictment in front of the media, fully utilizing his symbol as Captain America, as a black man in the Captain America suit. Such wonderful lines. I could probably do an analysis of that entire speech if I wanted to, but some things that spoke out to me and still stuck with me right now is that he's sort of saying that feeling of helplessness. We have a common cause. That very much read to me, whether it was intended to or not when they wrote this, like a call out to what we've been dealing this past year with the pandemic. We all, every single one of us on this planet, have had to deal with the pandemic in some way, shape, or form. None of us were fully immune from it. From the richest people to the poorest people, the most marginalized to the not marginalized, we've all felt it to some degree or another. Now, that doesn't mean we've all reacted to this common cause in the same way, but I really do feel that feeling of Captain America really saying like we have a common cause now. That feeling of helplessness that we all feel. You need to feel that now. You need to feel that the actions that you are taking make people feel that way every day. Your choices make people feel that. You're choosing to move people around, and just having all this power does that. And you need to do better. And the senator's saying like, oh, you don't understand. And he's like, I'm a black man wearing the stars and stripes. What don't I understand? I understand the complicated nature of that. And I love the call-outs through the editing in this sequence where he's saying, I see the judgment. We cut to Isaiah Bradley, who obviously... He is judging him for wearing the Captain America outfit. But I just absolutely love that.
Oh oui, j'adore le film. Oh no, what have you done?
I'm doing a, that's just not my bed.
Oh, I thought you had them all in. Oh, you're warming everything up for them.
But I'm doing a load of onion rings and some
Oh, okay.
stuff to make it look
That'll be fine.
cool.
Yeah, he hates you. No, 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 no. That's absolutely devastating. Oh my iron. Babes, I really don't care. Oh, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Oh. Ugh. Okay. Not what I meant to. Oh, yeah. Coming!
that moment. There's also another great scene where they cut to Bucky. I forget the exact line, but I just remember liking that they cut to Bucky at that moment. So apologies, I'm forgetting the exact line here. But such a great indictment from Captain America there. And I really love his final line where he says, "You have as much power as an angry god or an angry teenager." Sort of calling out that there's a reason that Carly had so many people that were influenced by her, that stood up for her cause, because the government is failing them. And I honestly, this feels like an indictment of today's government, the government's reaction to not only to the pandemic here in the United States and potentially other countries around the world, but also to the failing of the government to address issues that are affecting marginalized people. I don't overread my politics into this, but I do feel that there is an element of that indictment of the failures of government to recognize the struggles of marginalized people. There's a reason that marginalized people sort of form communities and bond together and are fighting back and trying to find community together, as opposed to relying on these governmental systems that continually fail us. I think that is such a powerful message today. I don't know if the people who should hear it will hear it through this MCU show, but nonetheless, powerful statement, and I'm so glad the MCU did that in this show. So props to them for allowing this to appear in one of their shows. But then I immediately after speech that Bucky and Captain America sort of have a quick moment, sort of Bucky saying, I was sort of zoned out, I didn't really hear everything. Just Black Panther and Stars and Stripes. That was very funny, very good. Then we get the Flag Smashers getting put away, and then their vehicle gets blown up, killed by Zemo's second-hand man, the Butler. He's doing stuff. It was Chekhov's Butler all along. I was very excited to see that. That was very fun. I like Zemo sort of getting a moment on the wrap where he smiles. Again, seems like Zemo's being set up for future things. A lot of set up for future things at the end of the show, whether in future MCU projects or potentially another season of the show. So I'm really liking that. There's a lot of still ongoing hints and storylines towards future MCU things. Then we get the Julia Louis-Dreyfus scene that I was talking about before, where we see that Walker is a U.S. agent. Thought that's cool. Again, clearly setting him up for other stuff. I've already talked about that a bunch. Then we get another emotional gut punch scene where Bucky comes in and apologizes to the old man whose son he killed.
Hi there, hello. My name is Michael of the Sandwich with a Pretty Big Pickle in It Fast Food Corporation. For years now, you've trusted us to provide you with sandwiches that have, pretty big pickles in them. They're not too small, not too big. I'd say they're a decent size. Now, we're setting our sights on your children in a non-creepy way. That's why today we're happy to introduce little plastic toys for kids. From now on, if you buy a child-sized sandwich with a pretty big pickle in it, it'll come with a little plastic toy for your child. Oh, I'm gonna play with this for a couple of minutes. Toys make kids happy, and so we're hoping that their little brains make the association that our corporation also leads to happiness. It's not really a bribe, it's more of a fun mental trick we're gonna do to them. But wait, my kid already has a bunch of toys at home that he never plays with. Hey, shut up, come get a new one, okay? Are these biodegradable? Nope. Nope, it's actually a kind of plastic that gets more durable with age. So hey, come on down and give us some money, because we got a lot of these toys for your kids. It's actually not suspicious that we spent millions of dollars on toys for children, so don't even think about that too much. And if your children's new favorite restaurant is the one that gives them a gift, that's just a happy coincidence. Don't look into that at all, please. Some people in our test group said it sounds like we're trying to brainwash kids, but good news, that couldn't be further from the truth. All we're trying to do is modify their thought patterns so they have a positive association anytime they think of our corporation. How would you even go about washing a brain? Through the ear hole? Not necessary. They're self-cleaning, like a kitchen stove. Hey, as long as I get a couple of minutes apiece while my kids are playing with the toys, that's all fine with me, because I'm not doing well. I'm not doing okay. Also, hey, we got a mascot now. It's a guy in a fun pickle costume, so your kids can look at that. That's entertaining, right? So hey, get your kids in your wallet and come over here and get a little freaking plastic toy right now. And if that's not enough, maybe I'll put a ball pit in the restaurant. Just get the kids here. Maybe a little thing of milk. Do kids like milk? Bring your kids here right now.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
That we learned way back in episode 1. This was a really, really well done scene with very limited dialogue. He sort of comes in and says, I killed your son, I apologize, and the old man says why, and he says, you have a choice, and everything just was left after that with kind of silence. Very powerful, and I love the choice to just have as little dialogue in that scene as possible, and really hit me hard. And then we got the scene where Bucky sort of gives gives Steve's notebook back to the therapist saying, I've made my amends and come to terms with the fact that I wasn't able to control things when I did the things that I did as a Winter Soldier. So I like that. That was a very, very strong and powerful end to Bucky's arc through this. Then we get my second favorite section of this episode after Captain America's speech to the senators. We get Sam and Isaiah having one final moment. Obviously, Isaiah's nephew, I believe, I don't know him, but I know he becomes a Young Avenger at one point in the comics, so they're clearly hinting that he's sort of being set up to be a Young Avenger at some point with the references to him throughout this season. I don't remember his name or what character he plays, but I do know that he's supposed to be a Young Avenger. But anyways, back to Sam and Isaiah. Really powerful scene here. I like that. I think Sam's most powerful line in that segment was, we helped build this country and nobody's going to tell me that I can't fight for it. That we did a service to all the people who came for it. Obviously talking about the black community and black slavery and the blood that was spilled by many black people fighting for their freedom and for their rights. A really, really, again, powerful scene. And I like that Isaiah kind of gets inspired by it, but doesn't fully reciprocate and say, I agree with you. I like that, again, we're sitting in the uncomfortability here, that this show does not say that this is the easy answer, that, it's cool and right that, Sam is becoming Captain America, and that's 100% okay for every member of the black community. I like that the show is acknowledging that. And again, that's a larger conversation that I should not be the main voice in terms of feelings on that, but I like that this scene really inspired, but didn't go too far and forgive or forget and sort of wash away some of the things that could be taken issue with a black Captain America. So I appreciate that the scene was able to definitely handle both things. Sam takes Isaiah to the Steve Rogers Memorial, and there's now a memorial in there for Isaiah and his contributions to the country and remembering him as a super soldier as well. This is a very, I really love that and how powerful it was to sort of see Isaiah have a statue in there, sort of remembering black history that often got erased or forgotten. Too often black history is just left off of the textbooks, and I'm liking that Sam is sort of using this moment to say, like, no, we are going to remember this man and remember what he did, and we're not going to allow black history to be forgotten, the pain that black people felt to be forgotten. It was absolutely wonderful, and I thought that scene was, it hit me, and I can't imagine what it would mean to, the black community as well. So, I thought it was a very, very powerful moment. But then, of course, we have to end the series on a party, just a great, like, sort of barbecue party sort of thing. It was really nice, sort of, again, ending on community, one people, one world. I wasn't like that, it's sort of, like, subtly sort of echoing Carly's statements, and sort of that idea that Carly wasn't necessarily wrong, that we should be borderless, we should come together. Maybe she didn't do it the right way, but that idea, that inspiration is not fully gone, and sort of hinted at in his final moments. Also, Bucky being, like, an uncle. Bucky was, like, being such an uncle during that whole scene, like, people playing with his arm and everything. That was, it was nice to see Uncle Buck doing all that, so that was kind of fun. And then we get our after credit sequence, which clearly hints that Carly gets a full pardon, and now she's going to have even more power as a power broker and access to government technology and information. So that is also very, very cool to sort of see where her arc. It was nice to see Uncle Buck doing all that, so that was kind of fun. And then we get our after credit sequence, which clearly hints that Carly gets a full pardon, and now she's going to have even more power as a power broker and access to government technology and information. So that is also very, very cool to sort of see where her arc is going to go into the future. So ultimately, like I said, I think I really adored this episode. I think, it's not my favorite episode of the season so far, but it had two of my favorite scenes throughout the MCU ever. With the stunning indictment from Captain America, as well as the final scene between Sam and Isaiah. Truly fantastic. Wonderfully done. Biting commentary from this episode by the MCU. Something that I had not really expected from the MCU in such a direct way. It was just all around such a great, great episode. And I think, for me, a very solid finale to this show. I hope that this show gets a second season, but honestly, I'm now more excited than ever to see Sam take up the mantle of Captain America in the movies proper. Just to see him, like I said earlier, on the big screen will be so exciting to see him in that suit on the big screen being Captain America. My body is ready for it, and I'm so excited. So that's all I have to say on this. I will say, now that we're done with the show, I'm not going to be reviewing.
Hey there, interwebs, I hope you're doing well. So for today's video, instead of doing my normal Friday videos, which are more heavily edited, produced, and let's just admit it, filled with my freaking amazing costumes lately, like, I've been killing it with the costumes, let's just all be honest here, alright? Just validate me, please. But we're not going to be doing that today, unfortunately, because today we're going to kind of be doing a sort of stripped down video for two distinct reasons. The first and most important of which is that I'm going to be talking about a fairly serious issue surrounding an upcoming autism charity event, Color the Spectrum, which is perhaps one of the biggest autism charity events that has happened in the past few years. And given that this is happening next week, I felt like the sooner I got this video out, the better. And so sadly that means no costumes. But before we get into that, I also want to briefly mention the other reason why this video is going to be a little bit more stripped down, because next week, on Friday, August 30th at 11 a.m. Pacific time, I'm going to be releasing one of my biggest videos that I've ever done on this channel, one which will contain a big announcement about both this channel and my life.
(2018) Maths and Excel paper. 2018.
And so considering that I'm still kind of working on that and editing that and finalizing that as I record this, you know, that's part of the reason why this is going to be a little bit more stripped down for this week. So please, if you can, come join me for the premiere of that video, which like I said, it will be at 11, but the video will be up after that, of course. But it's going to be the only video that's going to be going up on this channel next week in honor of how big it is and how important. It is. So I'm really excited to share both it and the news that's within it with all of you. But enough about me. I know, it's sad. But we have to talk about something more important, because we have to talk about something more important, the Color the Spectrum charity and Mark Rober, as well as the controversy surrounding the event and its main sponsor, Next for Autism. Despite what I'm sure are some good intentions and true caring by many folks involved in this situation for the autistic community as a whole. I'm going to try and do this with my normal even-handedness. I want to try and give credit, as much credit where I can, to people that I'm criticizing, and sort of try to do my best to sort of see all sides of the issue as best I can with this. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to sort of lay it out here right up front. I don't think that people should be supporting this event for all the reasons that I will be talking about in this video. So I'm just going to lay that out up front. But I will, again, try to be as charitable as I possibly can to all parties involved. Also, for those of you who may not be familiar with me or my channel, just so everyone knows, I myself am autistic and a member of the autistic community. So if you want to know more about my own personal experiences with that, and me sort of talking also about Star Trek for a bit, because that's what I like to do, I shared some of my own personal experiences with being on the spectrum in this video, that I'll link there, and also down in the down below. So let's get to the actual meat of this. What's going on with the Color the Spectrum charity event? What even is it? What's the issue? And what are some of the pieces and problems that have gone into all of this? And why do I personally think that you shouldn't support it? So the Color the Spectrum event was announced by YouTuber Mark Rober in a recent video. Mark Rober is a former NASA engineer and currently huge YouTuber with over 18 million subscribers. And on his channel, he talks about science and gadgets and fun stuff like that. Honestly, given that I'm a huge sci-fi geek, I'm mildly surprised that I didn't actually know him specifically until this event came up, though I'm sure I've seen some of his videos in passing, because he seems like one of those guys that I would be super into, like a really smart geeky dork who's a super nice guy who has a cool family and likes talking about, like I said, nerdy science stuff. That's my kind of person, like, to a T. And I want to be clear right up front, because whatever I'm going to say in the rest of this video, I want to make especially clear that Mark, to me, does seem like a kind and caring dude who really wants to do the best for the most people, especially when it comes to his son. So I just want to make that clear. I'm not necessarily criticizing him overall. I am criticizing some things that have gone on around this event that he has helped lead the charge of. But that, unfortunately, brings us to the issue at hand, because last week, on April 16th, 2021, Mark released a video called The Truth About My Son, a video which now has over 14 million views as of April 20th when I wrote this script. And in that video, he shared that his son is autistic, as well as discussed what it was like to be a parent of an autistic child, as well as some of the issues that his son faces as a result of being autistic. Overall, I think this video is actually really incredibly sweet. You get this feeling that the man knows his stuff for the most part, and he wants to be considerate of his son, but he also wants to use his extremely large platform to share the struggles autistic kids can face, as well as the struggles that he faces as a parent of an autistic child, as well as never losing sight of the fact that his son is a full, wonderful person and a loving person. For example, in the video, he does a great section on sensory overload, which is a feeling that many autistic folks, myself included, where we can't really focus on certain certain senses because we constantly are aware of all the sensory input that we're getting all around us. We just experience it all at once.
So if you and I were having a conversation here in this park, I can ignore everything around me and just focus on your voice. But if I had autism, I would hear the ice cream man ringing the bell behind me, and the kid crying because he's not getting any ice cream, and the cars going by, and the plane up there, as well as the train in the distance. Not to mention all of the different smells, and the fact that the tag on my shirt is kind of tugging on my...
When your local pub reopens, order a Stella Artois to give a Stella tip.
It's sensory overload, and everything comes in all at once, and it's really overwhelming and makes it hard to focus.
Here's a bit about the tag there. Really hit me hard because, dear Lord, especially as a kid, I had to cut all the tags off my clothes because I couldn't even focus on anything because of how itchy they were. So they just distracted me and I had to cut them all off. So that reads really, really true, and I think he did a good job there. He also shares that his son loves to draw pictures of everyone he meets, which is incredibly adorable, but also dispels the common and harmful stereotype around autistic folks that we're cold, aloof, or unempathetic. So this video on the whole is just really sweet, and his son is really sweet, and you can really tell that for Mark this was very heartfelt and meaningful, especially when you learn that the main section of this video was filmed 2 years ago, and it took Mark actually that long to feel comfortable releasing the video to the internet. So you know that he really considered and thought about what it would mean to release this video. Now, that being said, while I have praised it, there are a few issues with the video that are worth mentioning here, even though they're kind of aside to what our larger discussion is going to end up being. For example, Mark refers to his son as special needs, as well as having autism, as opposed to being autistic, which is kind of ableist language, even if it comes out of a good-natured desire to be kind. For example, calling someone special needs often feels like infantilization to many autistic folks, as well as condescending. Not every autistic person feels that way, but many do. Also, saying that someone has autism as opposed to being autistic implies that autism is something that afflicts you, like a disease or something like that, as opposed to something that you are. I don't have autism, I am autistic. Autism informs who I am as a person. If I wasn't autistic, I wouldn't be the person that I am. You can't cure autism because if you cured my autism, if that were even possible, you would be eliminating me as who I am. Yes, certain autistic traits can lead people to face issues in their life, like, for example, the sensory overload thing that we discussed earlier, and more stuff that I've spoken about in other videos, like from me, for example, my social anxiety, as well as there are many other things for many other people. Being autistic also informs a lot of my personality and things that I consider core to who I am, like, for example, my love and hyperfixation on Star Trek, for example. You know, if I wasn't someone who hyperfixated on things, which is an autistic trait, I would not have found and focused so much on my love of Star Trek, which I think is a good and important and core thing to me. Autism is just a very broad term to describe a set of loose personality traits or similar issues that people may face in their lives. Not a thing to be treated. It's just something to discuss how people are as they exist in their life. Also, Mark's video has this section.
People with special needs might not fit the traditional criteria of success by benefiting GDP or getting a PhD to cure a disease, but they have such a net positive effect on the people that get to interact with them. They personify traits like perseverance, such as with Jason here, who has autism and was the dutiful sports equipment manager for 4 years. So the coach put him in for the last 4 minutes of the game his senior year. He saved not 1, not 2, but 6 3-pointers, including one right at the final buzzer, for performance his supportive classmates will remember for the rest of their lives.
Now, to be fair, this kind of framing of thing is nice, and I've used very similar framing about success, and I actually agree with Mark here. I don't think that we should quantify success by finances or professional success or educational success or things like that, but doing that kind of framing in a video like this kind of implies, and I don't think this is necessarily intentional, but it kind of pseudo-implies that autistic folks won't ever really be able to achieve those measures of success, kind of pseudo-saying that we can only be successful if we reframe our mindset or change how we think about the world or change what we consider to be successful. It's kind of shitty, to be honest, even though I know that's not his intention. Like, I feel like I've had professional and educational success. I mean, I am a middling YouTuber with crippling student debt and a weird love of beards, but I still think I'm successful, nonetheless. But also, there are many autistic people who have succeeded brilliantly in their lives. Like, look at Anthony Hopkins or Dan Aykroyd or Courtney Love and many, many other successful folks who have been diagnosed with autism. So we don't have to redefine the terms of what success is for autistic people to be considered successful right now. I, again, agree with the sentiment, but framing it this way in this video, talking about the problems facing autistic people, as Mark's done, kind of has this unfortunate implication to it, this infantilization to it. So these are issues that I found with Mark's video, but in all fairness, they are things that I personally have gotten wrong in the past. Like, for example, I've said in my life that I have autism as opposed to being autistic before, because I didn't really recognize or care too much about the distinction. But, you know, as I've learned and grown, I sort of have known better. So that said, while I don't necessarily want to give a man who has an 18 million subscriber following a complete pass on perpetuating these issues, especially when he had 2 years of lead time to ensure that he got it right, I can also kind of understand why the mistake was made. Anyways, these are all issues with Mark's video, but I bring all of them up because I want you to understand how the mindset of individuals when faced with discussing the autistic community, when put into large-scale groups, when put into large-scale organizations, can start to have really dark implications, even if on an individual level it's innocent and someone trying to be kind. Because this gets us into our next section where we have to talk about the Color the Spectrum charity event. Because at the end of this video, Mark announces the Color the Spectrum charity event, which is a huge charity event to raise money and awareness around autism. As I said, it's one of the biggest types of events like this ever done, and it has huge celebrity guests like Andy Samberg, Adam Sandler, John Oliver, Chris Rock, Conan O'Brien, Terry Crews, Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill, Sarah Silverman, Stephen Colbert. Yes, like Andy Samberg, Adam Sandler, John Oliver, Chris Rock, Conan O'Brien, Terry Crews, Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill, Sarah Silverman, Stephen Colbert, Jon Stewart, and dear God, so many others, and it's being co-hosted by Jimmy Kimmel. He's one of the Kimmys. He's one of the Jimmys. I meant to say Jimmys. I said Kimmys. He's one of the Jimmys. Killed my joke there. But anyways, this is going to be a huge charity event, and it's going to be a live stream event here on YouTube on April 30th. The issue with this is, well, admittedly, there are a few things that there are issues with, but the biggest of which is that the charity is in partnership and to benefit Next for Autism. Now, before we get to Next for Autism, one other quick thing that is worth mentioning before we get to that part of it is the issue that this charity has as well on top of Next for Autism is that none of the announced celebrities involved in this event are, to my knowledge, autistic. I may be wrong in that, but that's the information I could find. And that's a huge issue because you're doing this whole event and not including a single autistic famous person as part of the main draw of the event. There's a saying in many marginalized communities that nothing about us without us. It's basically saying, you know, you shouldn't do anything for our community without members of that community being involved. And again, this is for any marginalized community. And the most obvious reason for this is we should just be included in things that are about us because it's about us. That just seems kind of obvious. If something's about us, we should probably be involved in it. But also, the real reason that this is a major issue is that if you don't include people of the group for which you're trying to discuss benefit or help, in this case autistic folks, you are going to invariably, most likely, get things wrong because you are less likely to be aware of issues or problems or concerns that face that community. Now, we've seen this in the autistic community with the recent movie by Sia called Music, which I did a whole video on if you want to check that out. But I've also seen it in other areas too, like with the endless issues of transgender and larger LGBTQ representation that I've also discussed on this channel. And we're also seeing it with this event because, as I said, the event is in an effort to benefit Next for Autism, which finally brings us to what the issues with Next for Autism are. Quite frankly, there are a few things. First and foremost, Next for Autism has done work in partnership with another group that many of you may have already heard of called Autism Speaks. Autism Speaks, for those of you who don't know, is probably one of the most, if not the most controversial autism charity group. There are many reasons for that, some of which I'll link down below if you want to learn more. But the biggest and probably most pertinent to this discussion are that Autism Speaks has a history of fear-mongering about autism, saying that it is this horrible thing that destroys family and lives and and everything about a person.
I am autism.
Send the gift of money home with World Remit this Ramadan.
Cadbury Dairy Milk Fingers.
I'm visible in your children, but if I can help it, I am invisible to you until it's too late. I know where you live, and guess what? I live there too. I hover around all of you. I know no color barrier, no religion, no morality, no currency. I speak your language fluently, and with every voice I take away, I acquire yet another language. I work very quickly. I work faster than pediatric AIDS, cancer, and diabetes combined. And if you are happily married, I will make sure that your marriage fails.
As well as the fact that they are putting money towards researching a cure for autism. Now, I spoke already about curing autism earlier in this video. It's not possible. Autism is a part of who I am. It's a part of me. Yes, there are issues I face because I have autistically coded traits, and some other autistic folks face even bigger challenges than I do. And yes, for me personally, I try to work through these issues through things like therapy, self-care, or even medication on certain things. But autism is also a thing that informs parts of myself that I love too, as I said before. And so to cure it, which isn't even possible, but even if it was, it would destroy me. To try to cure autism is eugenics. You're saying which traits of people. Are considered better or worth saving or needing a fixing or treatment. It's honestly gross and disgusting no matter how well-intentioned people going into searching for a cure for autism may be. Because a lot of people searching for a cure for autism, not all, but generally a lot of them are people who are caregivers of autistic folks. They're not actually autistic folks themselves. They're people who have to deal with some of the harder aspects of caring for someone with autism and so wish to cure it so they don't have to deal with it anymore. That's their hope in their mind. And again, I understand that to a point. But looking for a cure to try to say which traits of a person are worth saving, which parts of a person are worth saving, is eugenics and gross. But we've been talking about Autism Speaks, so let's go back to Next for Autism, because there are many issues surrounding that organization on its own beyond its working with Autism Speaks. First and foremost being that Next for Autism has been accused itself of being supportive and looking for a cure for autism, and using its funds to attempt to research one. Secondly, they also support applied behavior analysis, which is itself a kind of attempt to cure autism. It's a type of behavioral analysis that's trying to change behaviors of autistic children to appear non-autistic. But it's not actually trying to understand why a person is showing autistic traits. It's trying to force someone to not appear autistic instead of actually taking them on their own terms and helping them with who they are as a person. It's trying to make them hide their traits of who they are from the world in order for them to be more acceptable by society. It's not exactly a one-for-one, but it feels in many ways very akin to telling a LGBTQ person that they need to stay in the closet to pass as a straight person. To say, hey, you should just, you can be gay, just don't show it to anybody or anywhere. And obviously we know that has many drastic mental health effects for LGBTQ people in a myriad of different ways, as well as stigma associated with being LGBTQ. And again, it's not an exact one-for-one, but there's a lot of similarities here with this idea of trying to force autistic people to appear non-autistic. Additionally, none of the Next for Autism's board members are members of the autistic community. Again, this is an issue because, again, nothing about us without us, which goes to the issues that we talked about earlier. Now, I would be remiss to not discuss that when these issues were raised about Next for Autism surrounding this charity event, Next for Autism on April 19th, 2020 released a statement on Twitter. At least that's what I found it. I'm sure they probably posted it other places too. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to show it to you here and link to it down below. But the relevant information for you to know is that they say in the statement that they only worked with Autism Speaks as part of expanding access to programs and services to autistic folks, never in support of a cure. So they weren't working with Autism Speaks on a cure in any way, shape, or form, just working with them on other areas to help autistic folks. They also state that they don't support finding a cure for autism, and that they believe that applied behavior analysis, which we talked about before, has changed enough since its inception and study that it doesn't harm autistic folks, that it's sort of evolved enough as a science. They also reiterate that they don't support any groups seeking to eliminate or prevent autism. Now, within the statement, they also use the phrase people with autism, which, again, as we said before, that goes back to the idea of autism being something that afflicts you, that is separate from you, as opposed to being a part of who you are. But again, common mistake, but it's something that you think an organization like Next for Autism would avoid using, especially in this case, being linked with a controversy that is directly connected with that idea. But also in their statement, they link to an FAQ page on their website that does state, quote, Next for Autism is focused on services and supports. We do not believe autism is something to be prevented or cured. Next for Autism provides no funding or support for research into the cause or cure of autism. All monies raised are for services and supports. Next for Autism does not support eugenics. Now, I attempted to do a little bit of research using the Wayback Machine and a couple other ways that I have to look at pages' histories on this FAQ page, and from what I found, I cannot actually even be sure that this FAQ page existed before Monday. The earliest I found was a link to it being around on Monday, but not before that. That's not to say it didn't, but I also can't know what it said if it did. Though what I can say is that line that Next for Autism does not support eugenics, that specific line there, was not on the page until this Monday. So the page may have existed before Monday, it may not have, but it was also had a version of it that existed on the Monday of when I filmed this video that did not say Next for Autism does not support eugenics. Though they did add it after this controversy for clarification. So just kind of want to make that known that this might have been a statement that they added on their FAQ page in sort of response to this controversy, but at the very least that eugenics line was added in response to the controversy. This isn't to say this wasn't necessarily something they believed or had stated on their website before Monday, but it is sort of interesting to note that I couldn't find any evidence of it existing prior to Monday. And this sort of informs a lot of the other stuff I'm going to be talking about in just a second, because there are still some issues even after this statement, because not everything is so clear-cut as they make it seem in their response. First, they are still working with Autism Speaks. They openly admit that in the letter. Saying you work with a eugenics organization on specifically non-eugenics programs is still working with a eugenics organization, and it still gives them validity. to use an extreme example of this, just to highlight the point, not equating anyone with anything necessarily, but just to use an extreme example to highlight the point that I'm making, it would be like if I said, oh, I do work with Nazis, but only on non-anti-Semitic and racist stuff. Like, that's not how that works. You would still be working with Nazis. When you work with someone like Autism Speaks, regardless of if you're working with them on their controversial platforms or ideas, you're still lending them support and validity as an organization overall, which enables them to continue and support their horrible stuff elsewhere. Moving on, though, Next for Autism also helped found the Center for Autism and the Developing Brain, a center whose mission statement still, as of the time of I'm recording this video, contains a statement that says that part of their mission is, quote, conducting research that enhances the understanding, the causes, treatment, and prevention of autism spectrum disorders. So, there is a part of Next for Autism that they help fund that is still considered part of the organization, or at least something that they work with, that still apparently is funding research into a cure for autism. That's an issue. And additionally, as I said, there are still no board members on Next for Autism. That are part of the community. Though they do state in the statement that they are trying to change that, which I do commend them if that is actually what they're doing, though that may be something that they just said they're doing in their statement. I couldn't find any confirmation either way that that was something they were attempting to do before this controversy. Again, they may have, I'm not saying. I couldn't find confirmation of it in time for this. Additionally, on top of all of this, one of the of quote interview a few years ago for the magazine Town and Country. Now, I'm going to be reading this quote in just a second. It is about Harry's son, whose name is David. But before I read the quote, I kind of want to warn all of you that if you don't want to hear that, skip to the time code below if you don't want to hear that or discussion on it. Quote, we put locks on all the doors leading outside because we didn't want David possibly going into the pond. But there were times when you hoped he did, because you wouldn't want him to suffer like this all his life. So there's that quote, as well as that article, though this isn't Harry's words, but that article that quote is contained in goes on to say things like autism is so devastating, as well as more fear-mongering about autism. It's kind of a gross article overall, and again, it's not all from Harry, so I don't want to put it all on Harry's Latkin. But getting back to the quote, that quote is very loaded. I do get, to a degree, the feeling a parent might have when they're dealing with a child who is facing many issues, some of which may stem from them being autistic and have autistically coded traits. I can understand them having that feeling of wishing their child didn't have to suffer. I'm not going to tell a parent who is dealing with hardship like that they shouldn't or cannot feel that. I don't know, I've never been in that situation, but I do know that that is not an uncommon feeling. And it doesn't mean that parents would ever act on that or want that to actually happen, but we feel what we feel sometimes. You know, it's a feeling that many parents feel in a variety of situations, even around autistic kids. That being said, that is not something you share publicly in a magazine, especially when you are someone working for the autistic community. It can be seen as normalizing this idea that maybe autistic folks would be better off dead. It's not an uncommon sentiment, and I hope I don't have to explain why that's horrific. Even if the feeling that it's based off of is valid. You don't share that. Not in that way when you are a public figure working for an autism charity. Beyond that, though, a totally other board member for Next for Autism, Robert Smigel, stated in an article, which was a tribute to a recently passed away co-founder of Autism Speaks, this quote, acceptance isn't the first thing on your mind when your child starts displaying autistic traits. And then also within that tribute, they do advocate for cures for autism. To be fair, the tribute does acknowledge that there are some autistic folks who don't view autism as a problem. But then some ways makes the tribute worse, that they're still promoting a eugenics point of view despite clearly knowing better. And I also want to be clear that there are some autistic folks that resent being considered autistic, which I'm not going to invalidate. Like I said, there are people whose autistic traits make them suffer a lot in life. And so I'm not going to tell them not to resent that feeling. But I still am someone who does not believe in something like a search for a cure for autism, because I do believe that is a form of eugenics. But anyways, going back to the issue at hand, this is what we're left with. If I'm being charitable, all of these things I pointed out around Next for Autism could have been outdated information. Maybe Next for Autism, as they state in their response to the controversy, has learned from past mistakes and doesn't currently support a cure for autism. Maybe they've wisened up. But the fact that they helped fund a center which, as of this recording, still states in their mission that they're looking for a cure, as well as the fact that they have board members who have stated their belief in looking for a cure, as well as none of those board members being autistic, as well as the fact that they are working with an organization, Autism Speaks, that is overtly looking for a cure for autism, as well as their support of the practice of ABA, I have to say, it's not really looking good for them. I am certainly a benefit of the doubt kind of person, but even within that, giving them this benefit of the doubt feels very difficult in this situation. And even at the very best, even if I lend them every single benefit of the doubt that I possibly could, the fact that they haven't completely disavowed groups like Autism Speaks, despite acknowledging their issues, as well as them disavowing the practice of ABA, there's still issues there, even if I do give them all the benefit of the doubts. That being said, the person in this situation that I can give benefit of the doubt to is Mark Rober, a man who seems to really love his son and is trying to do something good for the autistic community with this charity event and his huge platform. But he really seems to have missed the mark here, having not done his research around which groups he was working with his huge platform. And despite what I'm sure are very caring and good intentions, he may end up helping, at the very least, a very problematic organization through a charity event that does not include any autistic folks at all, at least on the front line of it. It's troubling. And it's a continuing trend we've seen around the autistic community lately, with big projects like Sia's Music continually being the main talking point about the autistic community in the mainstream that never actually includes autistic people, and as a result, it gets things wrong and even perpetuates harmful ideas and stereotypes. It's people trying to care for the autistic community without trying to actually include us, but instead, as a result, infantilizing us, talking down to us, and helping organizations that may hurt us, and ultimately not seeing us for who we are. Anyways, I hope that this video helps illuminate my concerns with the Color of the Spectrum charity event. But that being said, I want to hear your thoughts on this because, like I said, there is a lot of gray area, there's a lot of benefit of the doubt stuff that we could talk about here, so I kind of want this to be an open impetus for discussion about this event, as opposed to just me putting a hard down line like this is what I feel. This should be the beginning of a conversation as I try to make all of my videos be. That being said, speaking of my videos, thank you for watching this one. Don't forget, next week that I have that big video coming out next Friday that I'm very excited about. The link to that premiere for that video should hopefully be going up, if it's not already up right now, within the next day or so. Don't forget also to subscribe to this channel. Also, I have a Patreon that you can support me at, but beyond all that stuff, I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. Here we go. So I'm finally here, performing for you. If you know the words, you can join in too. Put your hands together if you want to clap, as I thank you all with this patron rap.
Funding for Schaefer This is provided by Squarespace, the sponsor of today's video. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. Heidi ho, mammals! So Patrick and I, we're trying to come up with a new collab topic after making that LEGO Star Wars video last year. And then we thought, why not just do more Star Wars? I fucking love Star Wars! You know, most of the time. Actually, not even most, just some of the time.
So the question remains, was there another Star Wars subsidiary in our childhood that was beloved by many? It's far from a hot take to say that the prequels failed to live up to their own story, at least for most people. Memeable, they may be, but good feature films, they are not. And that's a darn shame when considering how heartbreaking the synopsis of Anakin's turn to the dark side is. A slave turned war hero turned political pawn against their surrogate family due to the resentment built up thanks to the death of their original family is a compelling story brought to life with some of the most sterile and stilted acting, directing, and dialogue ever. That's what happens when you try to do everything yourself, George. If only we had a team of talented Star Wars fans who could reinterpret and develop the story of Anakin's gradual fall to the dark side over a longer span than just 3 loosely connected movies.
Ha! What are you talking about, idiot? That already exists. It's called the Clone Wars.
Clone Wars is the best wars that ever happened in the Star.
The Clone Wars TV show is the reason the prequel era is my favorite in all of Star Wars. Through simple tweaks to the characters and story, this show managed to turn some cripplingly flawed movies into the basis for some of the best stories ever told in Star Wars. Patrick and I grew up loving the show as kids, and it only got better as it went along, peaking in its later seasons rather than its earlier ones. How rare is that for a show?
It's for this reason that we thought it'd be cool to do an entire retrospective of all 7 seasons, seeing how some of the earlier ones hold up, and having an excuse to gush about the later ones. This seemed to be a good idea until James reminds me that we had to rewatch the movie. Oh, god damn it! I got a bad feeling about this. You get it? That's the Star Wars thing, like in the movies.
Keep this up and the only thing we're gonna get is our money back.
No need to be hurtful.
Okay, so quick abridged history. Shortly after Revenge of the Sith came out, George Lucas was like, we better make a animated TV show about the Clone Wars era. You know, it's stylistically designed to be animated, and we can't undo that, but we can diminish the effects of it. It seemed to be going well. Lucas hired some guy named Dave Filoni, who directed multiple episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender. He was a big Star Wars fan, and especially a massive fan of Plo Koon. You know, Plo Koon, that guy. He got died in Revenge of the Sith movie. The final fun fact about Dave Filoni is that his cowboy hat is the source of his power, and that's why he never takes it off. You see the shot of him playing this X-Wing pilot in The Mandalorian? I have it on good authority that he was wearing his cowboy hat underneath the helmet. You have to trust me, guys. I have insider info. My uncle is Disney, so there.
So Dave Filoni, George Lucas, and the rest of the team whose names I do not know were developing the show, and it was coming together well. Then one day, George Lucas took a look at the nearly completed first few episodes of the series and said, why don't we take these episodes and put them in theaters as a big movie? And the team was like, oh. They didn't sign up for a movie. They thought this was going to be just for TV. This isn't cinema quality animation, but George just couldn't help going too far in a few places as usual. And thus, Star the Clone Wars was born.
If you thought the prequels got bad reception, holy shit, dude. Critics tore this movie apart. And like, did it deserve to be ripped to shreds? Yes, definitely, absolutely. It's a really bad movie. But to the extent critics went, I don't know about that. It's only the fourth worst Star Wars movie after all. But it's also abundantly clear that this was never made for the big screen. And it's one of the last examples of George Lucas having too much control over Star Wars during this era, with no one being able to keep him in check. The thing is though, whether you're looking at this story as a movie or as a 4-episode arc of a TV show, either way, it's still really bad. It's not a good introduction to these characters, and it's clear that Filoni and his team hadn't quite found their footing yet.
So, before we get into the mostly excellent TV show, we dive into this unflattering introduction of what these here Clone Wars are about. Let's... go!
The animation in this movie is hoodoo.
The Clone Wars has a very distinct style, what with its angular caricatures of Star Wars characters. It really looks like they took Gendy's Clone Wars and made it 3D. A unique animation style which may look off-putting at first, but it's really grown on people over time. Nah, the reason that animation is hoodoo isn't because of any art style, it's because the animation is wildly unfinished.
Nothing in this movie looks cinematic. The facial expressions are stiff, the lighting is flat, the backgrounds are sterile. Look at the shot of Captain Rex. This was in theaters. This was considered okay for the big screen.
I'm gonna do it. None of you can stop me.
I think the biggest embarrassment in the animation department are the lightsaber duels. They are just so stilted and so awkward that even as a kid I felt underwhelmed by them. Every hit just feels like two action figures being smashed together. They cut between poses so quickly that it doesn't feel like fluid movement at all. But at least Obi-Wan gets to do his epic wall jump maneuver.
The show's duels, on the other hand, are filled with so much kinetic energy, it's clear that these episodes were not only put into theaters for no good reason, but the episodes were also clearly rushed out. The animation is nowhere near the level of polish present in the actual show. Despite all of this, the animation is still somehow better than Rebels. Now we must leave before more Rebels stands arrive.
Hey, all this talk of Rebels reminds me. Let's talk about how bad the story is in this movie.
Enlisted is the free brand new online World War II shooter. Command a squad of soldiers and participate in legendary battles of the Second World War. Right now, the invasion of Normandy.
I can't believe how dumb this movie's plot is. It's about rescuing Jabba the Hutt's son. Let me run that by you again. Anakin and Ahsoka have to rescue the son of Jabba the Hutt. Who even thought of that? That's literally the dumbest plot I could think of. It sounds like a parody. Look at this stupid baby Hutt. If this was intended to be a movie from the start... I guess I can say that this was a pathetic attempt to appeal to little kids in the audience. But it was just meant to be part of the show, which makes its existence as a plotline even stupider.
Okay, let's rewind a bit. The Separatists kidnap Jabba's son. In response, Jabba asks the Republic to get him back. The Republic agrees because if they help Jabba, he will give them access to his private space trade lanes. Basically, this entire movie is the Republic and the Separatists fighting over who gets to use the Easy Pass lane.
At the end of the movie, Dooku bemoans the fact that the Separatists will have to drive in regular traffic, making their fight much more difficult. Even though A, these space lanes are never brought up once in the entirety of the Clone Wars series, and B, Palpatine controls both sides of the war, so this would have been a victory for him either way, and Dooku knows this. Why are you so glum? Your plan for galactic conquest is going perfectly.
This so-called failure is pointless. Nothing in this movie matters. This is all a huge waste of time, made worse by the fact that they tried to humanize Jabba the f***ing Hutt. We're supposed to sympathize with this grotesque, womanizing, frog-eating mafia boss because he lost his son. Well, golly gee, I sure am glad to see him get a happy ending. Let's just ignore the fact that Anakin saved the life of Jabba's son, only for Jabba to later enslave and try to execute Anakin's children. Gee, what a good guy.
And what the f*** happened to Bib Fortuna? I know he works for Jabba during the prequels. I saw him, and what happened to Mrs. the Hutt?
He doesn't like to talk about it.
Oh, but don't worry, the Hutt quota in this movie is filled by the greatest and most necessary Star Wars character ever. Zero the Hutt, Jabba's sassy gay uncle who speaks English and lives on Coruscant. It's hysterical. In the final 22 minutes of this movie, they introduce Padme, who informs us that Jabba has an uncle on Coruscant who we have never heard of until now.
Padme goes to Zero hoping to get the Republic back on good terms with the Hutt clan, because at this point in the movie, Dooku has tricked Jabba into thinking that it is the Jedi who are the kidnappers of Jabba's son, thanks to Anakin just having to be racist. But then Padme overhears Zero and Dooku explain their evil plan in excruciating detail. It's really an amazing twist, considering we've only known Zero as a character for 5 minutes. Hey, James.
What?
I guess this makes Zero a twist villain!
This whole Zero subplot is the best example of how this just structurally does not work as a movie. It would be fine to introduce Zero in his own episode, but in the last 20 minutes of a feature film? Why? Honestly, everything Hutt related just drags this movie down. Jabba is misused, Zero is dumb, and the baby Hutt annoys me with all the stinky jokes that surround it.
I don't understand how the idea of making a baby Jabba came before making a baby Yoda. Who looked at this horrifying monster and said, yeah, we can cutify that?
You know, it's stylistically designed to be cute, and we can do that. We can diminish the effects of its not cuteness.
It's so dense. Every single frame has something cute going on.
Also, this is an incredibly pedantic nitpick, but I love the scene where Ahsoka says the baby Hutt is burning up, and Anakin feels how warm he is using his robot hands. Like, yeah, I'm sure that gave you a good sense of his temperature.
Let's see. Is there anything else to talk about? Ventress is here. They just lifted her from the Clone Wars cartoon without explaining who she is. One would think they could really showcase the contrast between Anakin and Ahsoka's relationship and Dooku and Ventress's. But they don't do anything with that. Ventress is just a generic mini-boss, except not even for Anakin and Ahsoka. Obi-Wan fights her after they already left the planet with his punky poodoo producer, meaning this fight is pointless.
And now for the epic finale on Tatooine, the only planet where important galactic events ever seem to happen.
There's so much more we can talk about out here, like the sand.
Oh boy, Anakin's on his home planet for the first time since his mommy died. I wonder if that'll lead to any emotional scenes.
I don't want to talk about it.
Nope, none. We can't have him open up to Ahsoka or be emotionally vulnerable for a change. That would provide good character growth and render this movie not pointless. Instead, they wander the desert for a bit and split up in order to trick Count Dooku.
Dooku, being the megalomaniacal maniac he is, uses a sand attack on Anakin and manages to kill Jabba's son.
I have just killed Jabba's son. You fool! I have 70 alternative accounts!
Oh, I've been tricked.
Oh man, you tricked me. You got me good.
I got you. Anakin jacks Dooku's ride in order to help Ahsoka, and Dooku just laughs it off. What are you laughing at, Dooku? You gotta walk home in the sand now. Do you know how coarse, rough, and irritating that shit is?
Anyway, Ant-Man and Ahsoka get baby back to the daddy, and he tries to kill them. But at that exact moment, Padme calls and gets Zero to confess that it was him all along. Happy ending! Yoda's here! Good relations with the Hutties he has. Okay, so that may be the worst plot of any Star Wars movie.
Somehow Palpatine returns.
Never mind. But hey, the characters are probably good, right? Anakin is a huge improvement over his prequel persona, and this movie introduces Ahsoka. Everyone loves Ahsoka, right? Oh wait, hold that thought. I'm getting an urgent transmission from Zero the Hutt.
Oh, hi, it's me, Zero the Hutt. I'm just really bored in prison. I wish I could do something fun, like make a website for my Hutt Empire business and stuff.
Wow, Zero the Hutt from Star the Clone Wars Wars. Didn't you know that you can make a website?
Really? How am I gonna make a website now and use it to hire bounty hunters to break me out of prison?
That sounds good, and definitely 100% compliant with the canon of the series. Bye-bye. Okay, so what were we talking about? Oh yeah, Ahsoka sucks in this movie. Okay, so this is gonna be a really hard pill for you guys to swallow, but it needs to be said. Ahsoka is really annoying in this movie. She's actually kind of unbearable. On the one hand, it makes her growth throughout the show impressive because you can tangibly see how she becomes a more capable and mature character. But it doesn't improve her annoying, whiny, childish, arrogant persona in this movie.
Now, as an 8-year-old with no grasp of quality, I didn't mind Ahsoka. I loved her, in fact, but I think that was only because I had a crush on her. I saw her as this badass teenage Jedi girl in a tube top. But in universe and to adults, she's more of your whiny younger sister who begs you to take her with you wherever you go, but complains every step of the way. Still, I have to ask, what was this character design about? She's 14 and in a war zone.
I cannot stress enough how much every interaction she has with every character is irritating. We get to see her meeting Captain Rex, and at first it's pretty cool knowing how intertwined these two are later down in the saga. But then she's like, hey, if I'm a Jedi, don't I outrank you, Captain who's been training for this war since birth while I literally just got here? Like, what am I supposed to take from that other than extreme smugness and arrogance? It's not like she improves that much over the course of the film. Like, there's a tiny arc where she realizes that being a Padawan is harder than she thought, but it's really nothing substantial.
Speaking of nothing substantial, that's exactly how I describe Anakin and Ahsoka's relationship in this movie. I get what they're going for with Anakin having to adjust to training someone as brash and headstrong as he is, but all that really amounts to is constant bickering because Anakin is rightfully fed up with Ahsoka's blunders that are always the result of her arrogance. They try to balance this out with tender moments between the two, but I don't really buy that Anakin would feel this close to Ahsoka yet. Likewise, they definitely aren't close enough to the point where they would start cracking jokes with each other. If this were a TV show that didn't try to staple together the Battle of Crystalsis plot with the kidnapping plot, and those are just separate arcs in the show, then you could excuse the sudden and inexplicable bond between Anakin and Ahsoka. Because at least in a TV show, you wouldn't know how much time has passed between arcs. Anakin and Ahsoka could have bonded off screen because what we see on screen is really forced and unnatural.
I feel like the script could have offered more instances where Ahsoka overestimates her abilities without seeming arrogant in the process. She could express an eagerness to fight the Separatists and save people, while Anakin tries his best to gently let her know that this isn't how the war works. Emphasis on tries his best because this is Anakin we're talking about. There is an episode later on in season 1 where Ahsoka gets her troops killed and has to deal with the fallout of her mistake. But that's the kind of plotline they should have done early on, as in her first story arc. It would do wonders for Ahsoka's character arc and it would show how serious this war is. But no, we need to have her whine about how she needs to stand up behind enemy lines in this stupid box. Bro, it's so dumb that this worked at all. If I was playing Metal Gear and I hid in a cardboard box right in front of marching enemies, they would check within the mysterious box they just walked into. But I guess battle droids are really stupid, so okay.
Yeah, Jedi cut down like they're butter. And they really are pretty useless.
And then, oopsie poopsie, they ran into a droidica.
And then a Super Soaker complains instead of doing what her master says.
Run!
Must destroy. Hey, I figured out why Ahsoka is so terrible. She's just like Anakin.
Ahsoka, a very wise Jedi.
No, not him.
No, Anakin, no! No!
That's the one. While this movie takes great strides in making Anakin a better character than he was in the prequels, it then turns around and gives us the female reboot of prequel Anakin. Have fun, Dick Nips!
Again, we must stress that Ahsoka develops into an amazing character over the course of the series.
But we're not in the series, are we?
No. Oh well, at least they didn't give up on her despite her shoddy introduction and poor initial reception. Unlike a certain other female character, am I right, Disney? But at the end of the day, this is still only the 4th worst Star Wars film for a reason. This movie is the spark that lit the fire that burns the prequel haters down. And as such, it's got some good stuff that set the foundation for an amazing show. Let's talk about that. First off, Anakin is really cool for the first time ever. He's my favorite main character in the series, and it's no different in this movie. Finally, he feels like a noble hero with a bit of a dark streak, which is what he should have been in the prequels themselves. Plus, Obi-Wan is his same old amazing self. I kind of wish this whole movie was just the two of them instead of having Ahsoka in it.
Obi-Wan just hands up every scene he's in. The scene where he distracts Hor Loathsome by dragging out a surrender negotiation is actually pretty charming and fun. The whole Battle of Crystalsis is a pretty decent opener to the film outside of the annoying Ahsoka antics.
The score is surprisingly really good. It's very unique and rather unconventional for Star Wars. I loved hearing it. It's cool that they got some of the original actors back for the movie, like Christopher Lee and Samuel L. Jackson. Less cool in Anthony Daniels' case since he literally has no life outside of voicing C-3PO.
I like how this movie gives us a taste of how the show handles the clones. They're not just soulless killing machines, but they are still killed in droves because that's just how war is. I also love how Cody does karate on these droids. This guy, unfortunately, was not on his level. Also, the battle droids are pretty funny. You are a robot in a galaxy governed by the Force. Who is your god exactly?
I like the one scene where Anakin quotes Qui-Gon when talking to Ahsoka. It felt wholesome and fitting. Rex says a bad word at some point.
Don't let it shoot. It's gonna make things damn near impossible.
That was pretty epic of him. I don't know, is there anything else to compliment?
Well, you got me. By all accounts, we're dragging out the script.
You know, I've just about had it with this movie. It's not good, but at least it's a starting point for the TV show that would go on to tell some of the best Star Wars stories ever.
It's alright. A lot of great shows can't do pilots.
Anyway, tune in next time when we cover the actually good Star Wars products with the subtitle of Clone Wars. No, the other one. Yeah, boy!
Until then, this has been Pappy G. Please check out my YouTube channel where I make a bunch of shit posts and AMVs and the like.
And this has been Schaefer Productions, made of Force Speed.
But seriously, check out my YouTube channel. According to statistics, 0% of viewers are subscribed.
GameStop was a heavy...
Hello, interwebs, your favorite dorky transgender human here, yet again to talk about trans people in sports. I may be dorky and unathletic, but no, that's about it. I may be dorky and unathletic. No amount of hormones can change that about me. Hormones just gave me boobs, which I guess are kind of like sports balls, so that's sporty, and I can wear a sports bra now, so, and they certainly bounce. But regardless of my boob talk, we're starting off strong with this video, I also do have informed opinions, so I want to address this lingering talking point surrounding the recent prominent discussions and laws around transgender people in sports, particularly trans women in women's sports, and specifically around the argument that I've seen come up that, well, if trans people in women's sports are so controversial and problematic, why don't we just create a transgender sports league and just have all trans people play in that, and wouldn't that just fix the problem? We have the men's league, we have the women's leagues, and then we have the trans league, I guess. And we could even have, like, transgender-specific sports like the Dick-Off-a-thon, the Envy Games, T-Ball, because T-Ball stands for testosterone, because trans men inject... Look, I'm trying my best here with these jokes, alright? But seriously, a few weeks ago, I did a video on the issue of transgender people in sports, and I highly encourage you to watch that video, as it covers most of the topics that were sort of brought up around the idea of trans women in sports. And I think that this video is going to be more of a sort of further discussion and addendum to that video, rather than sort of like being an all-encompassing look at the issue, because I already did it in that video. But I did want to do this video because many people in the comments of that video did bring up this potential solution of creating a transgender athletic league as a possible way to fix the problems that I discussed in the video, and I hadn't really discussed it. Also, Newt is not here. He wants to hear about this, don't you, Newt? Hi, bud. You're just gonna stare at me? He's just gonna hang out right over there, right off camera. Like literally, like you can see his ear. Yeah, there's his ear. He's right there. You're gonna see him pop in and out of the camera every once in a while. Also, one quick announcement to quick make before we get into the meat of this discussion. Normally on this channel I do videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, as well as some reviews and live streams as well. However, next week there will be no Monday or Wednesday video because my Friday video is going to be one of the biggest videos I've ever done on the channel, and that video is going to contain an important announcement about my own personal life and this channel. All positive, all good. So just get hyped and get excited. I'm very excited to show that video to you. But as a result of how much work that video is going to take me, as well as me wanting to extra highlight and focus that video on this channel, sort of point everyone towards it, there will be no Monday or Wednesday video. There will still be the normal live streams. There will still be my review of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But beyond that, just that Friday video is going to be the big thing next week. So please look for that. But anyways, back to the transgender sports league. This may seem like a good solution at first glance, at face value. Trans people may get to play. Hi, Newt. He's just gonna come in now. Trans people may get to. Oh boy, Newt, come here. Come on. But anyways, let's get back to the discussion of transgender people having their own transgender league. This may seem like a good solution at first glance. Trans people will get to play sports. The issue of trans women potentially dominating women's sports is avoided, even though that isn't really an issue. Again, I talk about that in my other video. But this just lets everyone win, right? Well, not so much, because there's a lot of issues under the surface of this argument that aren't immediately apparent, but really have a lot of problems with them, including some really, really transphobic ones when you start to dig really deeper. Even though I know most people, and I will make this very clear, I know most people who commented on that and thought of this idea, put forth this idea of a trans athletic league, didn't intend those ideas at all. They weren't trying to be transphobic. In fact, I think most people who argued for a trans league did so out of a desire to try to be equitable and kind to trans people and allow them to have a solution to be able to play sports. But while that may be the intention of most people, and I appreciate that greatly, we do need to talk about why this idea won't work, and also why it's very deeply problematic and harmful in the long run.
Every source has a source. The Athletic.
Thousands of people are joining the action against Vauxhall in the latest diesel emissions scandal.
But let's start off with this argument in good faith and just ask the question of why not create it. First and foremost, the very concept isn't really feasible in the first place. While I spoke about in my original video that I don't think we should really segregate sports on the basis of sex anyways, but rather on different distinctions specific to each sport, such as weight classes for boxers, the reason that sex-segregated sports are so common is because, well, there are a lot of people who identify as cisgender, i.e. those who identify with their gender from birth, men and women. No matter where you go, if you want to create a men's sports league or a women's sports league, you're going to generally probably find enough men or women who are interested and available to create your team. The same isn't really true of trans people. Only about 0.6% of the US population is estimated to be transgender, so that equates to maybe 1 or 2 trans people, especially if you're living in a small town or community, if any trans people. And considering that many of these discussions and laws have centered around trans
trans girls on the student level, 1 or 2 trans students per school really can't make up a whole team. So just feasibly, it's not really a possible idea. It might be possible in, say, a larger city or community. I mean, Los Angeles, which has a pretty large transgender community, has, for example, the Transgender Choir of Los Angeles. So it's possible to get together a large group of transgender people in larger communities. So you might be able to do it there, but would we also have to segregate these teams by gender on top of that? Would there be a trans men league, a non-binary league, a trans women league? And so that distinguishes it even further and eliminates how many people you can have on each team. But even then, who would they play? Would you have this team compete against cisgender men or women's teams? Wouldn't that just be the same problem that we had at the start anyways of trans people playing and going up against cisgender people? Or would
Je suis pas un gangster. Check the nails. Baby, how you feeling? Feeling good as hell. Walk your finance out the door. I get my hands up. Feeling good as hell. Check my nails. Candleman. Check for now. Live. Oh shit. Oh shit. Alright. I kept my hand up. We've got loads more. Okay, okay. Bon hiver. Bon hiver. Bon hiver. Feeling good as hell. Feeling good as hell. One high five. Da 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 da. Baby, how you feeling? Feeling good as hell. Rihanna. Rihanna, do you wanna have a child with me? North Carolina, no, but you're wild with me. I see you on the TV. Frédéric Tal. Taste of your lips out of my mind. You're toxic.
These leagues travel around from city to city playing other transgender teams that may or may not exist. Now let's even say that that is possible, which it most likely probably wouldn't be, that we could create a bunch of different transgender sports teams in different cities who could play each other. Who would fund these teams going from city to city? I mean, where would they get the money? Look at the difference already in how men's and women's sports teams are funded and paid today. Forbes did a report that found that in basically every single sport besides tennis, which is mostly a solo individual sport anyways, men were paid and men's teams were funded significantly more than women's and women's teams. So taking that into account, that women's teams are already kind of screwed over financially, how would you think a transgender athletic team would be funded? Probably not at all. Considering how hard it is for LGBTQ issues to get funded, even when they're much more life-threatening than sports, like transgender healthcare issues, for example, I doubt you'll be able to get enough funding for a transgender team to regularly play other transgender teams traveling across the country, let alone any transgender athletes who would be able to take enough time off of work to do so, because I'm sure as hell you won't find enough money to pay transgender athletes enough for a full-time salary just playing sports. And again, what about solo sports like tennis or weightlifting or boxing, things like that? Women's sports are often significantly less promoted, so what do you think trans tennis or trans boxing would get enough promotion or funding to even be feasible as their own leagues or their own individual competitions things? Even if you have solo trans athletes playing against each other, like would you, again, like at a weightlifting event, would you have women's, men's, and then transgender sort of competitions? That just seems weirdly unnecessary and just dilutes the whole point of this competition idea. So just on the face of it, this whole concept doesn't really hold up to any scrutiny as a potentially realistic solution of the problem, no matter how good faith or kindly the argument is. But taking that into account, there's something else about this argument that really irks me, because even if this was somehow feasible, it just is kind of wrong to do. Because it's saying that we should treat transgender people as a completely separate group, that we should create a separate but equal league. And I think putting it in those terms kind of highlights the issue. Now look, I don't want to take this equation of transgender issues and equating it to racial issues too far, because race in America and transgender and LGBTQ issues in America are two discussions that, while they have a lot of similarities in terms of how discrimination is placed against these two communities, there's a lot of similar ways that rhetoric and harm is done to people of different races and people of LGBTQ identities and transgender identities specifically. They also do have very different contexts and histories within, especially the United States, such as with the history of institutionalized segregation and slavery that black people had to face in sports. But I also do think that this specific point in comparison kind of makes it clear that arguing to separate trans people out is an inherently problematic argument. It's saying separating transgender people out from cisgender folks otherizes us. It makes us seen as something different and weird when we aren't. You know, as I said in the original video, trans women are women, trans men are men, and non-binary people are non-binary people and deserve to play on the sports teams that align with their identity. And it's kind of alluded to within that too. Non-binary people, because we sex segregate on sports, don't really have anywhere to go specifically. They kind of have to choose one or the other if they're allowed to play in sports at all. We should be segregating on things that are specific to each sport. And also going back to my original video on this topic, sports are an inherently unfair institution, an unfair thing. That's kind of the point, that someone is better than someone else. And transgender people are just people, and so we deserve to have access to sports like everyone else. We deserve the chance to show what our bodies can do in comparison to other people's bodies. And you can't argue to me that we should be placed in separate groups, set aside from each other, when we have every right to compete alongside and with everyone else, both within our identities and also just in that inherently unfair competition to show that maybe we can beat these people in certain ways. Again, maybe we can find different ways to separate us out rather than just on sex, but we have every right to compete against other people who can maybe beat us, maybe not. That's kind of the point of sports. Even more so, as I pointed out in my original video, the science behind all of this is still very clearly out on if transgender women actually do have an advantage against cisgender women, and where we do and where we don't. Again, I could break down the studies in science like I did in the first video, but let's just use common sense. Maybe a trans woman who went through a male puberty might be able to do better in swimming because she has longer arms, but maybe the extra body mass that she has due to increased bone density and lessen muscle mass because of her taking hormones might slow her down in swimming. So we don't know which. Maybe she'll have an advantage, maybe she won't. Kind of the point of sports to figure out if they do or not, if someone does. Trans women also have increased weight due to, like I said, bone density and lowered oxygen capacity after being put on hormones for a year. So she might not be as fast a runner against a cisgender man, but then again, maybe a trans woman might be a faster runner because she might have statistically longer strides. It all varies from sports to sport and honestly from person to person. So it's really just kind of pointless to me to argue because, again, the whole point of the thing is to decide who is better. So like, if someone has an advantage in sports, my answer would be like, yeah, someone might. That's kind of the point. So if the point of sports is based on unfair advantage, to single out transgender people for being transgender within that is inherently transphobic. You're saying these people don't get to take part in our league and they should just be put over there. To say transgender people should be segregated from everyone else because they're trans is just wrong. And I feel that this overall conversation shouldn't be who we should exclude from a sport, but how best to include everyone. And again, this means, as I've said numerous times in this, that the answer to this question is that we should stop segregating sports by sex in general. That would also allow non-binary people to play in the sport without having to choose which gender they want to be viewed as in their sport. And also, it should make clear, some non-binary people will align more femininely or more masculinely, and they'll want to sort of maybe align with those sports of sort of men's sports or women's sports based on how they wish to present in the world, even though they are non-binary. I myself am a non-binary person who presents more femininely, and so I would probably be, if I was in sports at all, be more likely to want to play in a women's sports league. But that being said, the very idea of like me having to choose that, even though I present more femininely, kind of negates my non-binary identity in a lot of ways. But again, this goes back to the answer to this question is we should stop segregating sports by sex in general. Each sport should figure out a more specific way to separate their sport based on their own specific criteria, because even removing trans people from the equation, there are cis women in certain sports who would kick the butt out of some cis men. We saw that, for example, in the Battle of the Sexes in the tennis game. The top tennis player was able to beat one of the top men's players. I know there's some specifics about age and stuff within that as well, but like it just shows that like men and women can beat each other regardless of whether they're trans or cis. So why not separate like how boxing does, as I said before, on weight, for example, to allow people to sort of better compete against people who are more likely to be closer to them in their competition class, regardless of gender. Sex segregating sports makes sense on the surface because it's like an easy way to do it that we can sort of do wherever we want to and have enough people to do it. But ultimately, the reason trans people are so problematic to this discussion in a larger societal context isn't because we ruin sports. It's actually because having to include us forces all of us to reckon with the issues inherent in the system that already exist because we sex segregate. And so the answer isn't to discriminate against trans people. The answer is to try to fix the system to be more inclusive. But sadly, we don't always want to take the hard way that might be more inclusive. We sometimes want to take the easy way because that's the path of least resistance for most people, even though it harms and just targets people who are more vulnerable. And also, all of this discussion has been focused on professional sports in this conversation that I've been having here. But the conversation in actuality, as it's been played out in sort of laws and discussions and news and things like that, has really been focused on trans women in student sports. And as I said before in my original video, when it comes to student sports, we should be teaching our kids not to see their transgender brothers and sisters and siblings not as others, but as part of their community, part of their group. To not say trans women are different and something that should be separated out, but trans women are women and should be allowed to play and consider comrades and teammates with their fellow women, cis or not. We should let transgender people feel included and have equal access and opportunities to sports as any other kid. They deserve that. We shouldn't be teaching kids to see each other as something other that should be placed over there in some kind of fantastical transgender league that may or may not exist, but just that we are all part of the same community, even despite our surface differences. And finally, as I said in the initial video on this, the reason that this is an issue at all isn't really about asking these questions. It's about one that's being raised in order to use a surface level argument to galvanize us against each other. The right versus the left, and they're using trans people and trans ideology to try to harm the children and harm the kids, so you should vote for us or vote for the right, vote for the left because we'll fix this issue, we'll fight for trans people, or we'll fight against this transgender ideology harming our children. It's just people in power using these arguments to make straw men versions of ourselves to just keep us fighting each other instead of actually having the conversations that we need to have. In actuality, what we should be doing is coming together as a community to ask each other respectfully how we can fix this problem, how we can make it more inclusive for everybody, how we can make a community that includes everyone, that celebrates everyone, that enjoys everyone and loves everyone in equal measure. And I feel like that's ultimately what we need to be talking about with this conversation, not about laws and some stupid political straw man arguments, but about how we can all come together to just celebrate ourselves in the form of sports. All right, that's everything that I had for this discussion, but I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down below in the comments. What do you think about a transgender sports league? I'd love to hear all of that. Also, don't forget, as I said before, next week there will be no Monday or Wednesday video because my Friday video is going to be a big announcement, a big video on this channel that I'm super excited about, one of the biggest videos I've ever done, and it will have a very important personal announcement, so please check out that video. I'm very excited to show it to all of you. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that. I also have a Patreon page that you can help me out on, but beyond all of that, I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. Here we go. So I'm finally here, performing for you. If you know the words, you can join in too. Put your hands together.
Check the neck. Feeling good as hell. I get my it's fine. Good as hell. I've got my hand. Check me out. Pretty plug. Awesome. Eight, 16. Put my hand, check my check me now. Good as hell. Bumming them. Am I? fuck you. Good from checking it.
Funding for Schaefer-Ellis is provided by Surfshark VPN. Tune in until the end to find out about their amazing service. Hey everyone, I'm back from my year of not watching any kids cartoons. I think I was just feeling burnt out on a lot of them because I was tired of all these overarching plot lines and lore that were stretched out between tons of filler episodes. Once Steven Universe Future ended, I figured a break was in order until something really special came along, like the next Avatar or Gravity Falls. And I think I finally found it. Infinity Train.
Hey James, there's this totally fun new character-driven lore-filled cartoon on Disney Channel. It's called The Owl House. Watch The Owl House. It's just one season, so it's not that big a time sink. Hoot.
Yeah, both of these shows are excellent, but Infinity Train is going to be much harder to dive into because it's, quite frankly, a lot. So we'll save that for a later date. Let's talk about the fact that when I hoped for the next Gravity Falls, I didn't think I'd get it quite so literally. The Owl House feels like a true spiritual successor to Gravity Falls, probably because its creator, Dana Terrace, started out as a storyboarder on Gravity Falls. Also, she's dating Alex Hirsch, who made Gravity Falls and who voices some characters in this show, just like in Gravity Falls, so that might also be a reason why.
What are you talking about, James? Sorry about that. I don't see what you're talking about, though. This show is completely different from Gravity Falls. It's about a goofy teenage girl who lives in a magical shack in the woods with a wanted criminal elderly person who's a bad role model that deep down genuinely cares about the child they've taken in. Also, there's a demon with a high-pitched voice that comes courtesy of Alex Hirsch, who elects to use the exact same voice he did for Bill. Yeah, I guess this is Gravity Falls 2.
It's more than that. The Owl House is, oh, by the way, this This is Patrick, in case you haven't watched any of the videos he's appeared in previously. He introduced me to the show, obviously. But yeah, the Owl House kind of feels like a mixture of Gravity Falls and Star vs. the Forces of Evil, without any of the latter show's downsides. Instead of having heavily lore-focused episodes, the plots are much more episodic and focused on different magical concepts, just like Gravity Falls. That show had stuff like a shrinking episode and a body swap episode, and so does this show. It's that sort of thing. But there's also undercurrents of this magical society having a ton of secrets to discover. The first season slowly builds up its mysteries over time, but it's not like you're constantly waiting for answers. You watch the show because it's a legitimately charming slice-of-life magic adventure series, much like Gravity Falls was. The ongoing mystery is just kind of a nice bonus on top.
Plus, just because the show is mostly episodic doesn't mean that the status quo is stagnant. While the main plot is pretty unintrusive, characters will still go through arcs throughout the course of the show, so the lessons learned in one episode will carry in the rest of them. You can see everyone's tangible development, and that's great to see. It's nice to have another show where the plot is in service of the characters rather than the other way around. The overarching lore is just an excuse to see these lovable characters interact in interesting and most of the time perilous situations.
Anyway, we should probably talk about those characters, huh?
Hold it! Nothing is sacred in terms of spoilers, so watch at your own risk.
So our main character is Luz, which I pronounced as Luz for the longest time. Whoops! Luz doesn't fit in the real world, so she gets sent to what I assume is that one reform school from Phineas and Ferb for the summer. But she doesn't go there because she finds a mysterious portal to the Boiling Isles, a land of magic and witchcraft and so on and so forth. She soon meets the mysterious owl lady Ida and her demon roommate King, who, yes, has the exact same voice as Bill Cipher.
It's not every day you get to go to the dump and pick apart a garbage carcass. Reality's an illusion, the universe is a hologram, Michael, bye!
Oh, the irony. It's hilarious how the Bill voice goes from being used for an invincible interdimensional demon that commands respect to a little baby Cubone thing that is never taken seriously.
Luz also makes new friends who go to this magic school that she eventually enrolls at. On that subject, I actually really like how she doesn't immediately enroll in the school. It only happens like a little over halfway through the first season. It's a neat touch that makes the pacing feel more realistic, since she needs to take time to hone her unique magical abilities instead of just immediately jumping into being the first human in a mythical wizard school. Anyway, Luz meets Gus, who is just kind of a huge human fanatic, Willow, who is kind of boring, not gonna lie, I don't really care for her that much, and Amity.
If you know anything about the Owl House, then chances are you've heard everybody sing their praises about how expertly written of a character Mittens is. So much of the discussion surrounding the show is dedicated to Amity, and it's easy to see why. Unless, of course, you haven't seen the show, in which case, second spoiler warning, because it would be more interesting to see the direction Amity's character goes yourself.
Amity is an instance of a clear improvement over one of Gravity Falls' old concepts. She's basically Magic Pacifica, but instead of waiting until the second season to kind of redeem her in like one episode and then not use her again, she's one of the main characters here, and her development is really neat to see. Also, instead of teasing the idea that Pacifica might get with the main character romantically, they go a lot farther than that in this show.
But Mr. Shafe, wouldn't that make her gay?
Yes, it would. Amity develops such a hard crush on Luz, and it's so wholesome. Apparently, Dana Terrace had to push really hard to let Disney make her characters gay, which doesn't surprise me. If anything, I'm surprised Disney actually said yes in the end. But yeah, these two are a really well-written pair that you definitely want to see come together eventually. The fact that all this groundwork for a same-sex couple has been laid out in season 1, rather than waiting until the final episode like most other animated shows, is pretty nice.
Luz brings out the best in Amity, making her a better person, and Amity helps bring her back down to earth when Luz bites off more than she can chew. The two are so perfect for each other, and that's illustrated so well in their Grom dance. And I mean illustrated so well, literally. The Owl House's animation becomes very smooth whenever there's a big fight scene, but they made sure that this scene was given the same fluid animation because this is an equally big moment. Not just for Luz and Amity's relationship, but for representation in kids' cartoons and Disney media. I do imagine that in season 2, this relationship will only become more over, but that might result in Amity having an even greater conflict with her parents. I just hope that Dana doesn't have any more conflicts with Disney about this. As of now, I am cautiously optimistic to see Lumity develop.
Amity also has these two siblings who look suspiciously like Link and Zelda, and then there's this background character that looks exactly like Saria, even though none of my friends believe me when I bring this up. And also in one scene, Ida has a bunch of human world junk, and one of these things is a solid snake body pillow. Yeah, there's a lot of fun geeky references in the show. I mean, in the first episode, Luz says this.
I like editing anime clips to music and reading fantasy books with convoluted backstories.
It's all pretty charming and fun stuff.
So you got the general gist. You get it. Luz is one of the most adorable protagonists ever, Amity is one of the best developed characters ever, but I've got a boiling hot take when I say that I'm not super into Ida. Wendy Malick is a talented actress, but something about their vocal delivery in this show just seems kind of lackadaisical to me. There's no range in Ida's voice, in my opinion. She has the same snarky yet monotone voice in every situation she's in. Most of the time, that fits Ida, but she still doesn't have much energy in her voice when situations get serious or emotional for her. As a result, her relationship with Luz still feels one-sided, even in the situations where she acts motherly towards Luz. The writing of Ida is great, but the delivery of her lines is off to me. Another problem I have with Ida is that I feel too much of her development in the show revolves around her relationship with Lilith, who, unlike Ida, is a character that I am sure I do not like. Lilith, when we first meet her, has an interesting dynamic going on with Ida. She's the rule-abiding leader of the Emperor's Coven who's trying to arrest Ida out for her many crimes. Also, they're sisters. I love Lilith's design, and she seems like an imposing presence after her first epic witch battle with Ida, but she ends up being a really pathetic threat throughout the season. Turns out they're just a Team Rocket type of villain, and by the end of the season, well, that would get into more major spoilers.
Fascinating stuff. Counterpoint, I love Ida. She's a fun character with the exact same vibes as Grunkle Stan. She's completely irresponsible and a terrible person to be looking after a teenager, which makes the hijinks she gets into all the more enjoyable. Plus, she is pretty world-weary and knows how to avoid certain traps that the naive Luz wouldn't think twice about jumping into. I think the relationship between Ida and Luz is particularly strong, especially since she gains a much greater appreciation for her as the season progresses. She also has this curse that turns her into a monster unless she drinks some magic potions to control it. There's plenty of episodes where she needs to get more magic potion, plus episodes where it runs out and Luz and King are forced to deal with a monster version of Ida. I just think it's really compelling stuff. Like, it's kind of a metaphor for a chronic illness that gets worse over time, and it's really powerful to see her try and cope with it and see her friends do the best they can to help her. But I agree about Lilith. I don't like her.
Okay. I see what you're putting down.
I'm not putting anything down.
I'm not saying Ida's a bad character, but I do think her having a strained relationship with her sibling and being a con artist that learns to become a better person through the actions of the goofy kid they took under their wing is a bit too similar to Gravity Falls. But I guess Diet Grunkle Stan is still Grunkle Stan. Ida is hilarious regardless of how her lines are delivered. However, I take offense to your slandering of Willow's name. I think for your generic nice girl in the group, she has much more going on with her. What with her past with Amity. I like how despite the fact that Amity wants to make amends, Willow is still not 100% forgiving, which is very interesting considering she's usually the moral compass of the group. And yet, she has quite the dark side.
True.
With O2, get the epic Samsung Galaxy S21 5G from under £41 a month. Don't miss out.
Harness your creativity with AI and the computing power of Z by HP.
Anyway, another nice aspect of the show is how creative the episode concepts are. Like I said, there's plenty of standard, fantastical episode storylines like body swapping and shrinking, but there's also episodes where Luz and King are forced to write a best-selling book or else they get crushed into tiny squares, so they have to work in literal crunch time. There's one episode where a subplot involves Ida and King raising some horrifying abomination bat children for money, and then it comes back in the main plot of a later episode. There's the aforementioned Grom episode that takes a look at what a prom would be in a magical world. Basically, if you're Grom Queen, you must battle the immortal demon Grom that will destroy the entire world. So you don't want to be Grom Queen. The show just keeps these fun concepts coming and always feels lighthearted and fun, except for the moments where it knows to be serious and somber. Mainly the last two episodes, which are mostly pretty strong dramatically and shake up the status quo in interesting ways. There are some small problems here and there, like I don't think it's quite as laugh out loud funny as Gravity Falls, though it still is really funny. I also really don't understand why Ida is a notorious wanted criminal and yet she markets her wares in broad daylight and strolls around like there's no problem all the time. Like I don't know why Lilith and the rest of the Emperor's Coven has such a hard time catching her. This is a random nitpick, but while the Understanding Willow episode is really good, I feel like the concept of burnable photo memories that damage the original person's actual memories is like absurdly dangerous. How is this something that's allowed to happen in school? I don't know, this is a school where this is what happens when you get detention, so I guess it shouldn't surprise me.
And now major spoilers, because I have some beef I want to vent about in regards to the last two episodes. Not to say that these episodes are bad, far from it. The finale provides some of the most epic, intriguing, heartbreaking, yet heartwarming moments in the entire series. The problems lie with the antagonists, also the fact that they write Amity out of the plot. So in these episodes, we meet the big bad boss Bellows, who's been alluded to throughout the show's run. There's a lot of mystique behind his origins, and instead of giving him a generic deep evil McDarkness voice, he sounds very refined. So far so good. Then he reveals that he's been lying to Lilith in regards to healing Ida's curse. No, that's not a good. Okay, backing up here a bit, Lilith's main motive to capture Ida is because Bellows promised her that he would heal Ida's curse, but he's just fibbing out his ass. It's honestly a big pet peeve of mine when villains don't hold up their ends of deals. It's much more interesting when a villain fulfills their promises, but does so in a roundabout way that's still a negative outcome to the protagonist. With Bellows faking it, how can we determine if anything he says about the Titan's will and whatnot is true? That may be the point, considering this guy is a master at censoring and revising history to his liking, so maybe we're supposed to view him as some sort of false prophet. It's too early to say. So as he is now, Bellows is a mixed bag of quality, although it is pretty sad to see Lilith think she's saving her sister, only to realize that she doomed her sister to petrification. Oh wait, it's not sad, because Lilith is a terrible person and character. As if I already didn't dislike Lilith before, it turns out that she was the one who cursed Ida the whole time.
I saw that coming like halfway through the season, FYI.
Now, as a concept, I don't mind this twist, and she makes for an actually intimidating villain with her putting Luz in mortal danger to get to Ida. It is because she makes for such an evil antagonist that her 180 shift to becoming one of the good guys is extremely jarring. I think they should have spaced out her redemption arc over the course of another season. Like, maybe she comes to find disdain for the Emperor's methods naturally over time, rather than just being forced to turn good to save her sister. It's in character for her to not want her sister to die, so that's why they shouldn't have gone with this liar reveal plot in the first place. Ida's life didn't have to be in danger for Luz to still mount her rescue mission. What if Bellows just straight up couldn't heal Ida's curse because there's some sort of magical restriction where only the caster of the curse can heal it, and since Lilith didn't truly know how the curse works, she doesn't know how to undo it. Then while Luz fights Bellows, Lilith can start to make amends with Ida by sharing the curse with her, just like she does in the actual episode. Lilith wouldn't be on the good guy's side, she just doesn't want to see her sister suffer from a curse that was exclusively her mistake. As it is now, the characters don't seem to hold any vendetta against Lilith, which is just ridiculous. That could change in season 2, which is important to keep in mind. I may not like certain directions taken in the finale, but what they do with these plot threads in season 2 could change my mind. Plus, it's not like the finale was all bad. Lilith sharing the curse with Ida is still very touching, the fight with the two of them is amazing, all of Luz and Ida's interactions in this episode are heart-wrenching, and we're left with tons of mystery about where the series is going to go from this point. I mean, I guess Dana did offer some insight into what we can expect in season 2. It's gonna have parental conflict, a lot of emotions, island exploration, and new characters. Hey, I wonder why she arranged these 4 lines of text like how she did. Oh. Ooh boy.
Yike. Anyway, overall this series is great so far and I cannot wait for season 2. The Owl House is exactly what I've been missing. A show with a lot of deep and interesting lore that doesn't rely on that as the primary drive to watch it. Instead, it's a series of really fun, magical slice of life episodes that develop the characters more than the overarching story. I've had a hard time getting into a lot of Disney Channel shows over the past few years, and even the ones that did grab me initially really unraveled as time went on. But as long as the Owl House continues its commitment to really fun, developed characters and non-intrusive dramatic reveals, I think it might be on track to exceed Gravity Falls. It's easily the best Disney Channel show since Gravity Falls, and I highly recommend hopping on Disney Plus and giving the first season a watch right now. Come on, you know you have Disney Plus. I know you've been watching WandaVision and The Mandalorian and The Falcon show maybe. Just watch the Owl House too. It's so good. I give the first season an 8 out of 10, and if I
Whatever the day brings, Grammarly helps you communicate smarter, one message at a time. Refine long documents.
Hello everybody, I hope you're all well. So a couple of videos ago, I asked you guys if you want
tout l'été on se connaît. Si on s'est mis ensemble, c'est qu'à la base on s'aimait. Si ma fierté je la dépose, feras-tu de même? Trop pris par la routine, on prend plus le temps de s'apprécier. Pour nos différences, pour nos trains de vie, nos divergences. Moi la musique m'a sauvé, même si toi tu t'en éloignais. Je regrette pas ma vie d'avant, tu m'as changé.
Today's video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. So, Chaos Walking. I've been super excited for this one. Not because I thought it looked super amazing, or because I'm a Daisy Ridley fan, even though I am, or because I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. No, I'm not even someone who read the original books when they were releasing. You see, it's a story with a premise so wacky at first glance that it demands to be watched. And then you get all the background information highlighting its production snafu. Yeah, this is a movie I didn't even know existed or was in production until I started seeing the news articles from this year saying that it was being delayed again from January to March. In my head, I was like, delayed again from when? Because that was after it had already been delayed from an unspecified 2020 release date after its original release date of March 1st, 2019. That is 2 years ago. And we'll get to why all that happened soon. But first of all, what the hell is Chaos Walking? Well, first off, it's not very good. It's not terrible, but I was kind of hoping that this would either be surprisingly great or just so bad that it was just a non-stop dunk fest. But after reading the books, I'm mostly just upset for fans of the series. Based on the novel The Knife of Never Letting Go, yes, that is a wordy title by Patrick Ness. Chaos Walking is a trilogy of books taking place in a world where something has occurred to kill off all the women and have left the men with something called the noise, which makes all of their thoughts manifest out loud and outside of their bodies.
Never seen a real woman before. You're all gone.
So what I'm saying is it's a nightmare land. Catch me dying if I'm somehow the only female still alive. We follow a character named Todd, played by Tom Holland, in the movie The Youngest Member of the Settlement called Prentisstown, whose world is very quickly flipped upside down when he comes across a pocket of pure quiet and realizes it's a person he can't hear. Because surprise, it's a girl.
Oh my gosh, you're a girl. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Oh, honey, run! Well, there are a lot of differences between the book and the movie. The general progression of the story is Todd and Viola escaping Prentisstown and Todd finding out that the reality he thought he knew was not as it seemed. Wacky, unique, maybe a little bit dumb on the surface, but I'm down. And sadly for fans of the books, most of the changes they make to make this work as a movie are not necessarily positive ones. But we'll get to that. I did end up reading the books. I think I probably would have been quite into them when I was younger. But first, what happened with the production of this movie? After the book trilogy concluded in 2010, Lionsgate bought the rights to adapt the story in 2011 when a ton of these dystopian YA series were being picked up for adaptations, building into the height of their popularity, which quickly became a roller coaster as like YA dystopian hit like a wall and then just fell. Like that dropped off so hard that some of the other dystopian fantasies didn't even get their final installments. Could have made it one movie, you greedy bastards. But that was 10 years ago. So what happened? Apparently Charlie Kaufman was hired to write the screenplay in 2012. You know, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Synecdoche, New York adaptation. I'm thinking of ending things Charlie Kaufman. But for whatever reason, Kaufman left the project in 2014, and then it took 6 other writers, including the author himself, to revise this first draft that he created. So who knows how much of that is still around. So regardless of how you end up feeling about this, the author of the series, Patrick Ness, was involved in the writing, and he's now one of the only 2 credited screenplay writers alongside Christopher Ford. Then in 2013, there were rumors that Robert Zemeckis was being considered to direct, you know, of Back to the Future fame, before Doug Liman was officially hired in 2016. At this point, Daisy Ridley hopped on to play Viola. Apparently, she was a huge fan of the series, and they nabbed Tom Holland towards the end of 2016 to be Todd. Then a year later, in November of 2017, the shoot wrapped with a planned release date of March 1st, 2019. So why is it just coming out now? Well, you see, the movie was deemed unwatchable and unreleasable after its first draft was finished, so they had to order reshoots, which is a huge deal when you have Daisy Ridley, who's contractually obligated to finish Star Wars, and Tom Holland, who's owned by the Marvel Mouse. But they finally managed to get those reshoots going in 2019, with the studio feeling confident that they could make it work after spending $100 million. So apparently there was like an alleged release date sometime in 2020, which was never announced, and then the first official new release date was January of 2021, when it then got delayed again until March 5th of 2021, which is when I heard about it. And they still couldn't send it to me because I live in Canada, and Lionsgate somehow knew that I lived in Canada, and it wasn't planned to release in Canada yet, so they kicked me out to E1 Entertainment, and they're like, ooh, we can't give it to you until there's a Canadian release date. So they sent it to me last week after it was already available digitally in a bunch of other locations, just because it wasn't available yet in Canada, because it comes out on like Friday the 23rd in Canada, and I'm definitely not at all upset by that. I'm a little upset. How did they know I was in Canada? But regardless, it's here 10 years later, and with a production history like that, I just had to talk about it. And as per usual, I watched the movie and read the book, so let's go over it, because they are very different. Obviously, this is just a modified adaptation of the first book, so they can make it work as a standalone in case they didn't get their sequel. I'm sure they're not getting their sequel. And these books do actually cover some pretty heavy topics, some of which carried over, like the idea of trying to make a better life for yourself, individual against society, gender politics, masculinity, suppression of information and education. However, they leave out a lot of themes, or they just didn't handle them as strongly. But I understand why this trilogy is so highly regarded in the young adult dystopian fiction world. It stays very consistent in tone and is oddly dark and brutal for something that is intended for ages 13 and up. And I realize that sounds insane because The Hunger Games is literally about children killing each other so that the undesirables remember their place in society. This movie, and especially the book, has some aspects that just seem like way more brutal than they probably needed to be. Like somebody gets his nose bit off by a dog in the book. There's also some rough moments with animals. All I'm gonna say is watch out for the rapid scenes in this movie. I'd probably just give it a little fast forward. So what did I think of it? Well, it wasn't great. It's the kind of thing that reeks of potential but then ends up being like so unbelievably forgettable. It does have some funny moments. Introduces some really great themes, but then ultimately just falls flat in a lot of ways. Like I'm working on this and a Shadow and Bone video right now because I got that early to review, and my brain just keeps pulling me in the direction of like that world, and I need to finish focusing on this world to get this video done. And one of the more disappointing things is that this world actually has so many interesting concepts and set pieces, and the movie just never really capitalizes on it. By the end of it, it just feels like a pretty run-of-the-mill YA action that doesn't try to do anything different with the themes that it has introduced and the story aspects that it has introduced, and it also just blows a lot of its mystery really early in the movie. Unpopular opinion, I'd rather watch the Percy Jackson movie. I have it on Blu-ray over there, so maybe you can't take my word on that. So Todd is from the not-so-distant future of 2257 AD, growing up in Prentisstown, named after their mayor, David Prentice. This is essentially a society that's left Earth and made new settlements in this new world. And in both the movie and the book, he was told that humans got into a war with the native species, the Spackle, who released something that inflicted the noise on men. In the book, it was a germ the Spackle released that killed off all the women, but the movie specifies that the Spackle actively came in and like slaughtered all the women, which seems completely unlikely. If it was like a physical thing, some women should have managed to escape, but we're going with it. But it's supposed to establish the idea that to Todd, the Spackle have always been described as these brutal monsters who humanity somehow managed to prevail over. Wow, humans go to another planet and kill off the native species where the aliens were afraid of. His mother obviously wasn't spared from this, so he was left to be raised with her friends Killian and Ben because his dad was already dead. Ben and Killian are not specified as being together, but I think the author confirmed that they are a couple. And this town is bitter. People are miserable and angry, and Todd hates it. And that's the Chaos Walking, bitter men with all their thoughts and anger just emanating out of their bodies, attacking people. It makes sense. This is essentially a society waiting to die. In the book, we're specifically told that as he was growing up, the mayor started burning all of the books. books, shutting down the schools, getting rid of any kind of education videos. Ben even got in trouble for trying to teach Todd how to read. There should be a theme coming into view here. And on top of the lack of education, there's an absolutely abusive religious preacher in Notre named Aaron who is quite obsessed with Todd and later Viola. And I'm going to tell you, the only preacher I have time for is the Velasa pastor.
I do drugs, sell drugs, murder people. Everyone's so pissed at.
Our first introduction of Aaron is Todd swearing and him just popping out to smack the bejesus out of him. And holy shit, I totally forgot there was a Jonas brother in this. And this is Davy Prentice Jr., son of the mayor and total dipshit. The reason why Todd has to leave Prentisstown so abruptly are similar but also very different between the book and the movie. So from here, I'm really just going to focus on what happens in the movie. Then we'll go back and talk about the things that were changed and the themes and how that altered.
At Homebase, you'll find all of these paint brands under one roof. Homebase feels good to be home.
For the entire story. So Todd's world essentially becomes flipped upside down. He comes across a girl who just crashed. Down in the New World. We get a flash of her scout ship coming down from the second wave of settlers starting to land, going through the noise. Her male crewmates getting affected by it before they crash, and she's the only survivor. This immediately lets the viewer know that the story about the spackle releasing the noise is a lie. It's just something that's natively on the planet. And my first question, a very serious one, is why did they give Daisy Ridley this hair? I don't think the book specified blonde. I went back to try to read it. He just described her hair as not being as long as he thought girls' hair would be. So why did they give her this horrendous wig? And even if she was described as being blonde, just let her rock the brunette. Anyway, she ends up getting captured by the mayor, who's super interested in her colony and how many people its ship can hold. And I actually really like this scene. I think it's one of the strongest, and it's probably just because of the solid conversation back and forth between the two. But a girl being in town causes the town to stir. And we see the mayor gain control over them by chanting this "I am the circle, and the circle is me," and his noise. Now the mayor in particular is described as being very good at controlling his noise. It ends up being a point of contention between him and preacher Aaron, who thinks everyone should just let their noise flow free.
You hide your noise like a woman. I consider that a compliment. It's not.
And when he's taking care of the townspeople, Davy Jones Jr. here starts messing around with all the stuff in her bag and almost blows up the whole building.
You know what you're going for.
Aw, Joe. So she takes this as her chance to escape, but then she overhears the mayor talking to Aaron about how they can't let her make contact with the ship so that when it lands, they can overpower everyone on board and use it to take over the planet. Somehow. He also mentions that he's sick of being in exile, which instantly lets us know that there's more to this new world than just Prentisstown. So then Todd ends up finding her hiding in his barn and knows he needs to protect her, which doesn't really make sense because the movie's established a connection where Todd likes the mayor's approval.
Your mind thinks I'm a man.
Look, I get it. You're a teenage boy in a society that has no girls, and then Daisy Ridley turns up. I could go to war too. This is when Ben and Killian decide they have to get him out of town, saying it's finally his chance to get out, telling him that there's another settlement past a swamp called Far Branch, that he's been lied to his whole life, and he can never mention Prentisstown. But before they can go, the entire town is there looking for her, and Killian ends up getting shot and eventually dies. She takes off on a speeder bike, and Todd follows her on a horse before it falls off a cliff, which was completely unnecessary. I will spare you what happens next, but he has to kill the horsey. But they start on their adventure with his trusty dog Manchi tagging along. She eventually warms out to him, talks about how her parents got sick on the ship and died, how they gave it all for her to have a better chance in a new place. And while he's talking about avoiding a spackle village, he explains that they're the aliens they had to fight to establish land in the new world.
They're aliens. Trying to wipe us out.
Not really aliens. Which is obviously not something that Todd wants to consider. Regardless of the fact that they're the invaders on this planet, he's always going to see the spackle as the enemy. Then after a really nice conversation, he ruins it by vividly imagining them kissing.
What are you doing? I'm sorry.
Good job, perv. When they do find Far Branch, Todd is not only shocked at the sheer number of women there, but also the children. He spent his whole life literally thinking he was the youngest person in the entirety of the New World. Then for some reason, Viola thinks it's a good idea to tell them that they're from Prentisstown, even though that's the one thing he wasn't supposed to mention. And the people here clearly have an issue with Prentisstown.
Any son of a bitch stupid enough to come here from Prentisstown gets the rope.
And honestly, if all their women are dead, but then all these women are here, it makes you wonder what happened. But it's making the whole town nervous.
Thank you, Julie. How long they staying? Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Julie.
The movie also loses points for tragic underutilization of Cynthia Erivo. But Viola is desperately trying to find a way to contact her ship to warn them, but most people let all that tech fall by the wayside for a simpler life, so they have to get to a place called Haven. And Todd's like, holy shit, there's more settlements?
You didn't just think there were 2 settlements in all of the world, did you? I thought it was one.
This is also where Viola reads Todd's mother's journal to him because he can't read, and we get the entire story of what happened leading into her death. How the men started getting paranoid because they couldn't hear the thoughts of women and hated the fact that their thoughts were on display. How Prentice and Aaron preyed on this and got into their heads even more.
Aaron, our holy man, said women don't have noise because we've got no souls.
Leading to the men killing all the women, and any of the men that fought back died too. And Ben and Killian just kind of had to let it happen so that they could be around to take care of Todd to fulfill his mother's wishes. So that's why they're in exile. I can see why the rest of the world wouldn't take so kindly to a town that executed all their women. This obviously really messes up Todd. Everything he's ever known in his entire life is a lie. Before they can take off for Haven, the mayor and his army catch up, and he seems to actually convert a bunch of the men in this settlement with his "I am the circle" chants. In the first book, there's rumors that the mayor's army is growing every time he reaches a new settlement, but here we just get it all on display. So with the help of Ben, who thankfully hadn't been killed yet, Todd and Viola managed to escape. But then Aaron catches his dog, and I would just recommend skipping this entire rapid scene. I'm going to talk more later about how the movie completely cheapened both Manchi's story and his death scene, but we'll get there. Then they get out and come across a semi-buried ship, the ship that brought the first colony of settlers. So Todd uses the antenna. Viola preps to make contact. But then Aaron is there and just absolutely brutalizing her, yelling about martyrs and sacrifices before it becomes apparent that he thinks he needs to be sacrificed because he wronged God by killing all the women and that she's the angel to deliver it. So she sets him on fire. While this is happening, Todd is trying to distract the mayor, who then kills Ben and ends up shooting Todd in the shoulder. And just as he's about to finish him off, Todd manages to use his noise to make a manifestation of all the women David killed, which gives Viola the distraction she needs to push him down a hole. Then Todd wakes up in a super sterile room, healing, with Viola right there next to him. Apparently the ship landed, they've managed to save him, and are planning on sticking around to settle a new life.
Can you kiss me? Shut up.
And thankfully it doesn't end with a kiss. It actually ends in the perfect way where it would have left enough room open for a sequel, but is also satisfying enough as a standalone movie because there's no way it's getting its sequel. So let's get into the book, some of the differences and what the movie ends up losing thematically as
Alright, baby, I think,
as a result. So to start with some shallow ones, in the book, Todd is turning 13 or 14 because for whatever reason in the New World years go by 13-month increments, and Viola would be around the same age. Tom Holland can pass for pretty young, but I'm getting the impression that he's probably supposed to be like 17 in this, so that he's almost turning 18. Whereas in the book, Prentisstown boys become men at 13. I kind of wonder if it's because Daisy Ridley was interested in playing the role of Viola that they just aged everything up. And honestly, if you had the capital to get two of the biggest stars from two of the biggest franchises in the world, get that marketing power. Now, how Viola gets to the New World actually does make more sense in the movie than it does in the book. Being on a scout ship of people that were specifically trained to be scouts makes way more sense than sending a mom, dad, and child down first to just make sure everything's all hunky-dory. But a hell of a lot more tragic in the book considering she had to pull her parents' broken, burned bodies out of the wreckage. In the book, Todd is also positive she's gonna get super sick and die from the germ because he's under the impression that that's why all the women died. Which brings us to the Spackle. While Todd was always taught that they were this brutal enemy that humanity barely managed to defeat, his mom's journal describes them as very kind. So in the book, the animals on this planet also have the noise and they can also speak out loud to different levels of sophistication. So his dog Manchi can actually say things, mostly just Todd's name and without having to poo. But this is going to contribute to a major change that I'll touch on in a little bit. I understand why they wouldn't want the animals actually speaking in this movie, but I feel like there's no reason not to give them the noise. The knife. Right from the get-go of the movie, Todd is a knife master. He's chucking it around, killing bugs. Yes, the original story is called The Knife of Never Letting Go, but in the book it's very significant to his progression and story arc. He also gets the knife from Ben as he's fleeing, which adds a level of emotional connection to it. In the movie, it's something the mayor gives him, and he actually really looks up to the mayor and loves his praises and the fact that he likes him more than his own son, Davy Jonas. But making this connection with the mayor is really weird because again, no real struggle comes out of it. One minute he trusts the mayor completely, and the next he's willing to completely betray him to protect this girl, even though the mayor said the girl is dangerous. Theoretically, there should have been some kind of conflict here because why add it otherwise? Also, his sick knife throwing skills have no bearing on the rest of the movie at all, so why? Speaking of the mayor in the book, he's actually pretty weirded out by him because every time he walks by his house, he hears that I am the circle and the circle is me chanting. It's implied and later revealed in the books that this is how the mayor controls people and how he was able to convert men from different settlements into his soldier army. And then when it actually comes to Todd leaving in the book, the second he lets slip in his noise that he had a quiet patch, Ben and Killian know that it's time for him to go because they were planning on getting him out of Prentisstown within a month so that he wouldn't become a Prentisstown man. The concept of becoming a man isn't really explored in the movie, but in the book, it's when the men are filled in on what their town did, i.e. murder every woman and then they have to kill someone too, essentially condemning them to that same life of exile and proving full allegiance to the mayor. And Todd being the youngest is like really important. This would essentially prove that the mayor could get control over every man, and Ben and Killian knew they couldn't let it happen, and this was their sign to get him out. Todd doesn't even know that Viola exists yet. He just felt the quiet zone. Preacher Aaron, dude is unhinged. Movie doesn't even tackle a fraction of it. He hunts them down brutally in the first encounter. Todd is only seemingly saved by a crocodile grabbing half of his face and ripping his ear off. He has to fight him again when he grabs Viola and still doesn't end up delivering the killing blow. So of course Aaron finds them again, and this time he actually kidnaps Viola, but thankfully doesn't do anything to her. By the end in the book, like in the movie, it's obvious that Aaron sees himself as a martyr, but unlike in the movie, he needs Todd to be the one to do it to complete all of the craziness of Prentisstown. And that's why Viola ends up killing him. Even if they don't believe Aaron's crazy bullshit, they don't want him to get the satisfaction of thinking that he won. She also really wanted to kill that bitch, so she stabs him in the neck. And that's a really important aspect of this story. Todd isn't a killer, and his struggle with not being able to do these things or not be as violent as he feels like he needs to be ends up being a constant cause of conflict for him. At one point in the movie, he comes across a Spackle who drags him out of hiding, and as he's fighting him off, Viola begs him not to go through with killing the Spackle because she knows he's not a killer. But in the book, he doesn't kill Aaron and then feels super weak for it. Then they stumble on a Spackle just hanging out around a campfire, and Todd, who's been raised his whole life believing the Spackle are brutal killers that resulted in the death of his mother, who just felt weak for not being strong enough to kill off Aaron, kills the Spackle while Viola is begging him not to. She keeps saying that he was clearly terrified and didn't want to fight, and the only reason why he was thinking of diving for a spear is because Todd was going at him with a knife. And even without this framing, Todd is already puking everywhere because of what he did, because he really isn't a killer. He can't even kill a turtle afterwards for food because of guilt. So for that and many other reasons, I don't really like how the movie turned the Spackle into the antagonist in that scene. Which brings us to Manchi. Poor Manchi. When Todd goes to rescue Viola from Aaron, he uses Manchi as a distraction so that he can get her away safely. This is only possible because the two can actively communicate back and forth with each other. And then it does play out like in the movie from here. Aaron gets a hold on Manchi and kills him. But we get this brutal addition of Todd and Viola desperately trying to fight the current in their boat to get back to him, but they just can't, and Manchi's just so confused as to why he's being left behind. Okay, maybe I'm fine with the dog not being able to talk. I don't want to hear that. But in the movie, Manchi doesn't really do anything, whereas in the book, he's like a constant asset. He had actually just ripped off Aaron's nose to help them get away. I hate that he died, but it felt like he was around for a good reason in the book, whereas in the movie, it felt like he was around just to die. Otherwise, the book just obviously has a lot more details. They ran into a guy named Wilf who helps them get through this field that's just loaded with like oversized, massive cow type things, which would have been so cool to see. It's actually really unfortunate that this movie didn't show us any of these like unique creatures that are established in a couple areas of the book. Wilf and his wife also warned them about these towns they wouldn't want to end up in, like one where they just insist on being naked all the time, and another one that just plays super loud music to drown out any of the noise. At one point, Todd is deliriously feverish after he saves Viola from Aaron, which brings us to an area which I would have taken an entire book about. Todd and Viola find a cult. I should write that book. I should write Todd and Viola find a cult. So after losing Manchi, Todd passes out from his fever and wakes up in a bed. And at first things seem chill. Viola's sleeping in a chair next to him, and a doctor comes in talking about how he almost died. Then Todd starts hearing faint music in the distance, which means this is one of the areas that he was warned against. So Todd immediately wants to leave because at this point the mayor's army has decimated its way through Farbranch trying to get to them, and they want to get out of Dodge before this town falls the same fate. But the doctor's like, well, now sir, just wait a minute, you have to talk to the alderman first. Then when he goes to get them, Viola says that the town blasts music day and night to drown out the thoughts of men, because the women here live in separate dormitories outside of town, so they don't interfere with the business of men and take care of their womanly duties like cooking, cleaning, and baby making. I think I'd rather be dead. Are you saying I have the option between living in this like cult-like baby-making society or in the town that's gonna kill all the... I will take the town that kills all their women. Yeah, that one. Oh, thank you. They managed to get away from here pretty quickly, but something about this cult-like story is drawing me in. I want to explore it more. Then the ending itself is obviously massively different. In the book, Davy shoots Viola just as they're making it to Haven, where they're also rumored to have a cure for the noise. Todd manages to get the upper hand on him with the snake thing again, but then when he gets to Haven, everybody is gone except for the mayor, who's like, ha, even the threat of a massive army is enough to make negotiations because I am now president Prentice of the entirety of New World, which is apparently what he wanted all along, world domination. And what comes next in the book is pretty heavy. Prentice has captured all the spackle and removed their noise so they can't communicate with each other. Todd ends up in a position where he's committing horrible atrocities to the spackle and ends up on some kind of like torture inquisition squad. Viola ends up in a resistance group known as the Answer. They ultimately go to war with the spackle. Lots of really heavy things going on where everybody thinks they're in the right. So if you're not burned out on dystopian YA fantasy, I would definitely recommend checking these out. I never fully dove into the genre, especially not when it was in its Hunger Games heights, but I enjoyed these. But yeah, overall, this just felt like a really shallow, bland adaptation of a story that had so much potential, and it's just really unfortunate. In a world with so many different pieces of media based in YA genre, especially in the dystopian aspects of that, it just can't compete. I honestly would have liked it if it had gone a little bit more ridiculous off the rails, but this is what we got. So remember when I said that they couldn't hook me up with a link for this until a Canadian release date was established? Well, with today's sponsor, ExpressVPN, that was a problem no more. By connecting to one of ExpressVPN's many secure servers, you can reroute your internet location to anywhere in the world. This was super helpful when this movie started becoming available online to every other country except Canada. I just popped on ExpressVPN, connected to a US server, and there it was. You can do this for all kinds of movies and entertainment. Like when I needed to watch Hostel for this channel, I just did a quick look up on unogs.com to see what countries it was available on, connected to one of those locations with ExpressVPN, and I was good to go. I use it all the time for a variety of streaming services. Like recently, I've been going through the His Dark Materials series on BBC iPlayer. It's super fast. I never run into any kind of buffering issues while streaming. I can use it across multiple devices with no issue. So if you want to try ExpressVPN out for yourself and find out how you can get 3 months free, head over to expressvpn.com/Jedi or click the link in the description below. So let me know what you guys are thinking down below. If you watched it, what did you think? If you're fans of the original book series, did you think it was kind of okay? Did it crush you emotionally a little bit? So thank you all so much for watching. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.
Hey everyone, so I've been doing a fair share of debunking lately, and I feel compelled to mention a trend I've been noticing in the comment section of those videos, primarily from people who are angrily defending the things that I am debunking. They like to accuse me of using logical fallacies, and they like to list those fallacies by name, but in doing so, they demonstrate that they have no idea what those fallacies actually mean. It's gotten really bad. I have to point this out several dozen times per day. So I decided to make a brief video focusing on the handful of fallacies that are most frequently cited incorrectly and explain what they mean. Here we go. First up, there is suddenly an epidemic of people using the phrase ad hominem. I have no idea what happened, but just a couple months ago, everybody on the internet started using this phrase regularly, where previously almost no one did. People who say this think that it means an insult. Obviously, this isn't accurate because insults are not logical fallacies. If you walk up to someone on the street and say, hey, you ugly jerk, that's not an ad hominem attack. That's just being mean. In actuality, ad hominem, which is short for argumentum ad hominem, is a rhetorical strategy that involves focusing on an aspect of someone's character as a means of debasing their argument rather than focusing on the substance of their argument. For example, if I was in a debate with Steve and I said, well, obviously Steve thinks that way about ethics. He has brown hair. Brown-haired people are always wrong, so Steve is wrong. Or if I said something like, well, what does Steve know about economics? He's unemployed and also doesn't have many friends. Or if I said, what can Steve possibly know about America? He's Bulgarian. Or if I said, well, Steve got a DUI in 2005, so why should anyone listen to him? You see, it's a logical fallacy. It's an attempt to discredit someone's argument based on fallacious reasoning that fixates on unrelated and irrelevant circumstantial details surrounding the opponent. So when I debunk con men like flat earthers or electric universe pushers or young earth creationists, and I say that they are con men or uneducated or unqualified, these are not ad hominems. They are statements of fact that are specifically related to the claims those people are pushing. Pointing out that someone is actively deceiving people for money is a statement of fact. Pointing out that someone possesses no degrees or professional experience in an academic field in which they profess expertise is a statement of fact. It is not a logical fallacy of any kind. The next most commonly misused term is a straw man, or a straw man argument. Those who misuse this think it just means a bad argument, or that it's just something you can say in response to any argument you don't like. In actuality, a straw man argument is one in which someone puts up a false representation or extreme distortion of their opponent's argument and deconstructs that rather than what their opponent actually proposes. So it's a way of misrepresenting your opponent. Some con men can be very devious with these, such as young Earth creationists who deliberately misrepresent biological principles to convince uneducated people that science is wrong. So when I take things that con men say and explain why they are wrong, this is not a straw man. It's me explaining how con men are lying and manipulating their viewers. Some people so thoroughly don't understand this that they will accuse me of straw manning on a video like my response to the Globebusters, which is literally me playing clips of them saying things and then deconstructing the things they themselves said. Directly quoting someone is the antithesis of a straw man. So people who use the term in that context clearly don't know what it means. They are just parroting a phrase they heard like a toddler mimicking its parents. Next up, argument from authority is tossed around a lot. This is usually used by science deniers who are denying science in favor of some crackpot, blissfully unaware that they are themselves committing the argument from authority. An argument from authority is when someone says, well, this person is a doctor, so they must be right about this miracle cure. Or this person is a physicist, so they must be right about this thing in space. The main reason this is a logical fallacy is that humans can be liars. Some people present themselves as doctors or physicists, but aren't. Wearing a white lab coat while you make YouTube videos is just a way to make people think that you know what you're talking about, and it works really well because YouTube is full of frauds dispensing advice on medicine and nutrition, which just consists of a flashy narrative that people want to hear, which is gobbled up by thousands of suggestible people who then defend their source using an argument from authority. This is precisely why citing scientific consensus is not an argument from authority. If every single chemist alive agrees on something about molecules, it's because that's how molecules work, which is demonstrable by the fact that we do chemistry. Molecules have specific behaviors, chemists study those behaviors and apply them in ways that are irrefutable and intelligible to any undergraduate student studying the subject. The same goes for any other field of science. Science is just things that we know, and there is no central authority figure. It's a body of knowledge. The irony is that the person who thinks the fake physicist on YouTube is right because they are a physicist should be 100,000 times more likely to listen to the 100,000 real physicists that collectively say something different. But people who think this way do not regularly apply logic to their worldview. And then to wrap things up, though it's not technically a logical fallacy, I am endlessly amused by people who use the phrase cognitive dissonance. This is mainly flat earthers who heard the term once, think it just means being dumb, and then diagnose everyone that debunks them of experiencing cognitive dissonance. What this term actually means is the state of having specific beliefs or behaviors that are highly contradictory. An example of this would be a fundamentalist Christian who preaches about forgiveness and loving your neighbor, but then turns around and actively hates pretty much every group of people that's different from